In the narrow corridor leading down from the Ares sky cells, torchlight stretched Bronn's shadow into a looming, serpentine shape against the cold stone walls. Tyrion Lannister, half his height and only fractionally armed with his wit, trudged beside him, still trembling with relief at having survived the trial by combat that Bronn had so coolly won. Outside, the wind howled over the high passes. Winter was close enough to taste on the breeze, sharper than the steel that had very nearly claimed Tyrion's life in the Ares throne room. But inside the winding passage, the air was thick with the reek of sweat, blood, and the clinging memory of fear. Bronn's expression remained inscrutable in the flickering light. Occasionally, he glanced at Tyrion, as though measuring the man's potential worth. He had bested Ser Vardy's Aegon, that much was certain. One duel completed, a handful of gold promised, and the mercenary was now nominally the imp's protector. Yet even in that moment, heading toward daylight, Bronn's thoughts churned with a kind of restlessness. The Lannister was clever, oh yes, sharp-tongued, silver-handed with coin. But coin was never guaranteed to last, and Tyrion's fortunes ebbed and flowed with every whim of the family that both hated and needed him. Bronn had no sense of personal loyalty or illusions of chivalry. He wanted a future that would ensure he was never again forced to bow or risk his life for the uncertain favor of nobles. They emerged into the courtyard below the Eyrie, finding themselves beneath the intimidating arcs of pale stone walls that stood against a sky as blue as glass. Lisa Arryn's accusations still hung in the air. The Vale Knights had parted to let them pass, some with open disgust, others with grudging admiration. Tyrion's relief at his new champion was evident in every fluttering breath, but Bronn studied the stone courtyard as if it might hold secrets to a better arrangement. A step behind them limped Tyrion's jailer-turned-escort, a Vale guardsman who muttered curses under his breath about black-hearted Sel's words. Bronn ignored the man entirely, but the faint sneer on his lips revealed his contempt. The guard glowered, seemingly waiting for an excuse to run Bronn through. But the Sellsword had already proven his skill. They knew a second attempt would likely end in as much bloodshed as the first. They continued along the twisting mountain road, leading away from the Eyrie and down its dizzying heights. The path was grueling, gravel slipping underfoot, steep drops disappearing into mist. Tyrion rode a borrowed Garen, the rangy little mountain horse picking careful steps over crumbled stones. Bronn walked alongside, occasionally guiding the Garen by its reins as Tyrion overcame his profound discomfort with sheer exhaustion. Each day of that descent, Tyrion tossed Bronn idle chatter. He mused about who might truly have attempted to kill Bran Stark, about his father Tywin's cunning strategies, about the ways in which the realm was fracturing at the seams. Bronn listened, gleaning bits of knowledge that might later be bartered for something of value. The imp had told him that he would pay well for loyalty, but how well and for how long? The Sellsword had begun to wonder if a better price might yet be offered by someone else. Perhaps Catelyn Stark or some other great lord wanting to hamper the Lannisters. Or maybe the Queen in King's Landing if Bronn promised to turn the imp into her hands. The possibilities swirled. The first real discussion about gold came when they reached an abandoned mountain village on the third night after leaving the Eyrie. A ruin of tumble-down huts gave them scant shelter from the cold wind. As dusk fell, Tyrion shivered in his cloak, warming his hands by the meager fire Bronn managed to build. "So," the Sellsword said, poking the embers with a stick, "you promised me a handsome reward for winning your freedom back there." "A Lannister always pays his debts," Tyrion replied, managing a wan smile. "Yes," Bronn said, "that's what the songs say. But I've yet to see the gold in my hand." "I'm no minstrel," Tyrion said, "and I prefer to avoid illusions. Your reward will be real, but you must realize that I cannot conjure piles of coin out here in the wilderness. Let us both see ourselves safely to where my father holds sway, or at the very least to an inn where my name can buy us passage, and I'll see that you're compensated." Bronn nodded, scraping an old chunk of bread through the ashes to warm it. "I'll hold you to that, imp. And if your father denies the sum, or if your sister nixes it, or if some other blow falls from the sky, I'll be wanting what I'm owed. That includes a future, not just coins for a month's trouble." Tyrion stared into the fire, picturing the labyrinth and complexities of House Lannister's intrigues. "If you remain at my side," he said, "I'll see that you never lack for women, wine, or lodging. Together, we can navigate these wars to come. But you must trust me." Bronn only grunted in reply. He carved a scrap of old cheese with the tip of his dagger, balancing it on the end before flicking it into his mouth. Trust was in short supply these days, and Tyrion's confidence, though striking, was hardly enough to outweigh Bronn's appetite for wealth and security. The idea of betraying Tyrion, selling him to the Starks, or even the crown flitted through his mind anew. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. Better to play the loyal man-at-arms, let the imp lead him to the real pot of gold. Then, if there came a more profitable opportunity, well, there were no binding vows between them, no illusions of brotherhood. The morning sun revealed the jagged path that would eventually lead them out of the mountains of the moon. Brigands lurked in the shadows, and Bronn had to fend off a ragged pair of them on the fourth day. Tyrion watched from atop the stumbling Garren as Bronn's sword flashed in the morning light, the clash of steel echoing among the cliffs. One bandit went down with a scream, blood blooming across his ragged furs. The second fled before Bronn could land a finishing strike, and the Sellsword let him go with a contemptuous snarl. They traveled onward, eventually reaching a proper road. Tyrion's mood lifted as the stark silhouettes of the mountains behind them receded, replaced by gentler hills. "We'll come to a village soon," he announced one afternoon. "Perhaps the inn will have a name that's an improvement over the last wretched place I found myself." He was referencing the time Catelyn Stark had seized him at the Crossroads Inn. Bronn spat to one side. "If it's a roof and a hearth, I'll take it," he said. "Now, let's hope they have a stable for that sorry nag." They arrived at a village of a few dozen huts and a squat, half-rotted hall that served as an inn. Tyrion had enough gold left in his purse to secure a cramped room and a hot meal. Over ale that night, he beckoned Bronn closer as though preparing to confide a secret. "I'll send a raven tomorrow," Tyrion said, "to my father at Harrenhal if rumor holds he's still there. He will supply us with everything you and I need for the next leg of the journey. I realize you fought bravely, and if you stay by my side, you'll share in the spoils. My father is waging war against the Starks, the Tullys, and perhaps even more foes soon, but he has resources beyond counting. Serve me well, and your name might rise high." Bronn took a swig of ale. The bitterness made him scowl. "And if I don't want to fight in your father's war?" he asked. "If I'd like to cut out somewhere else, maybe head to the Stormlands or across the narrow sea with my pockets jingling with Lannister gold?" Tyrion spread his hands. "I've no interest in chaining you, but I suspect you might find the taste of a major war to your liking. There's never a shortage of plunder. And I, for one, could use a man who knows the value of a well-timed sword." Bronn laughed softly. "A man who can take orders, you mean?" "Perhaps. Or a man who can interpret orders to the letter if need be. My father always said a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone, but my sister's mind is always sharpened for intrigue, not for reading. My brother Jaime is lost at Riverrun, or so we've heard. I might prove to be House Lannister's most valuable piece if they let me. You, in turn, would be mine." "Or you'd be mine," Bronn said with a trace of amusement in his eyes. "I'll follow for now, Tyrion, but I'll decide for myself whether staying is more profitable than leaving." And so the weeks passed in a reluctant camaraderie. They made their way along dangerous roads, bribing or bullying their way through minor lords' lands until at last they reached the fortress where Tywin Lannister held court amid the forging of his war. Harrenhal loomed on the horizon, a place of haunted towers and blackened walls. Smoke rose from its high battlements, and the smell of roasting meat mingled with the stench of old ruins. Tyrion approached with a certain pride, as though stepping back into a sphere where he wielded more than words. He wore a new cloak of dark crimson, freshly purchased, while Bronn still kept to his practical leathers. Guards at the gates recognized the Lannister dwarf at once, though their initial surprise suggested that they hadn't expected him to appear alive. Tywin Lannister's presence was felt throughout the courtyard, the neat lines of soldiers drilling, the bark of officers, the neat rows of tents erected in the shadow of towering walls. As Tyrion and Bronn dismounted, a steward hurried forward to greet them. "My lord Tyrion, your father will be most pleased to see you," the man said, though his voice held no genuine warmth. Bronn observed everything with an assessing air. He noted the impressive array of men-at-arms, the bustling squires running messages. The Lannisters, for all the cracks in their alliances, possessed wealth enough to fund a small kingdom's worth of steel. If Tyrion wanted to keep him around, he'd better see that Bronn's portion of that wealth was substantial. They were led through Harrenhal's echoing halls, black stone ceilings arching overhead. Damp and gloom clung to every surface, for the place was said to be cursed by the fires of Aegon's conquest centuries before. Finally, they arrived at a solar where Tywin Lannister stood by a table spread with maps. Beside him hovered a handful of knights and lesser lords, all murmuring strategies. The gold in Tywin's hair had faded to silver, but his presence remained as fierce as the dire wolf on the Stark banners. He glanced up, cold green eyes sweeping over the newcomers. Tyrion, he said by way of greeting. Then his gaze flicked to Bronn. And your champion. Tyrion managed a half-bow, ignoring the twinge in his knee from the mountain journey. Father, he said, you'll be relieved to know that, despite Lady Erin's best efforts, I remain among the living. Tywin's tone was clipped. I had received word of your imprisonment at the Eyrie. I was debating whether to dispatch men to secure your release or leave you to your own devices. You proved yourself resourceful enough, I see. He eyed Bronn once more, taking in the man's sharp features and wary stance. You did well. Name your price for your services. As it happens, we could use men of competence in these times. Bronn offered a shallow bow, though he did not lower his eyes. The imp has promised me gold, Lord, and more opportunities for advancement than some soldiers get in a lifetime. Tywin's stony face revealed little. Then you shall have your gold. He turned back to the table, dismissing Bronn as if he were an afterthought. To Tyrion, he said, we march soon. The Stark boy has been named king in the north. The boy King Joffrey sits in King's Landing, but his throne is precarious. Renly Baratheon crowns himself in Highgarden, and Stannis is stirring on Dragonstone. The realm fractures from all sides. If you're to earn your keep as my son, you'll assist in bringing House Lannister victory. Do you understand? Tyrion did not bristle at the phrase if you're to earn your keep, but it stung. Of course, father. How might I serve? Tywin waved a hand over the map. You will go to King's Landing. You'll serve as the hand of the king in my stead. Keep your nephew in check, manage the intrigues, prevent the city from tearing itself apart, and ensure that no one attempts to dethrone Joffrey while we press the war on multiple fronts. Your sister will no doubt make your task difficult, but that is your assignment. Bring your champion, or hire more swords if you must. Tyrion swallowed. The War of the Five Kings had escalated far beyond his near execution in the Vale. King's Landing was a pit of vipers, yes, but from a seat of power he might truly test his cunning. He gave a short nod. I'll do what you ask. That is not a request, Tywin said. Then, glancing at Bronn once more, he added, collect your gold from the steward. You'll go with my son if that is your wish. Otherwise, depart. Bronn smiled, a thin, calculating twist of the mouth. I think I'll stay for now. I've grown fond of the imp and the realm is full of opportunities. Tyrion gave a faint chuckle. There you have it, father. A man of simple needs. Yet as Tywin returned to speaking with his strategists, Bronn could feel a tension in the air. The Sellsword was aware that gold was not in short supply here, but his desire for a guarantee, a castle, a title, something that would elevate him beyond the dangers of mere mercenary work, those ambitions were not yet sated. He would bide his time, watch the warring sides, and weigh the possibilities. If Tyrion Lannister proved to be a path to lasting comfort, so be it. But if someone else offered more, someone who could pay in lands and fortunes beyond a mere bag of coin, Bronn might consider turning cloak. Within a week, Tyrion, Bronn, and a retinue of Lannister guards set out for King's Landing. Along the way, rumors whispered of Robb Stark's victories in the field, of Renly Baratheon's alliance with the Tyrells, of Stannis summoning a strange priestess from Ass High. War was near. The city's gates loomed ahead one bright afternoon, their tall shape etched against the horizon. They passed through the reek and crush of the capital, brushing aside beggars and hawkers as Lannister guards cleared a path. Up through the muddied streets to the Red Keep they went, Tyrion's gaze flicking about with both curiosity and apprehension. Bronn followed, the Sellsword's eyes scanning corners and alleyways for trouble. Inside the keep, the tension radiated like heat off the stone walls. Queen Cersei lurked in the throne room, regal in her lion-embroidered gown, flanked by the king's guard in white cloaks. The boy King Joffrey lounged on the Iron Throne, wearing a cruel smirk. Varys hovered in the background, smiling in that unctuous way that suggested he knew more than everyone else combined. Littlefinger was absent, off scheming somewhere in the city. And the councilmen, still uncertain how to react to Tyrion's arrival, parted in cautious greeting. Cersei's voice was like a razor. Tyrion, come to meddle in matters beyond your depth? Tyrion approached, affecting a casual bow to his nephew. Your Grace, he said, nodding to Joffrey with feigned respect. Then to Cersei, I come bearing instructions from father. I am to serve as hand of the king, ensuring the city remains loyal and stable while father wages war. Joffrey's lip curled. I don't need you, imp. I have my mother and my council. Tyrion's eyebrows rose. The council at the moment is a nest of anxious figures who would prefer to keep their heads attached to their shoulders. And your mother might be queen regent, but the king's business is far larger than just this room. I'm here to help you hold the throne, dear nephew, though you may not appreciate that fact yet. Cersei sniffed, golden hair glimmering in the torchlight. Father has no right to name you hand without consulting us. Tyrion offered a tight smile. He has every right, dear sister. Perhaps if we compare letters, we'll see just how strongly he words his suggestions. She glared, but eventually waved a hand for him to step aside. We will speak further, Tyrion. Your presence is tolerated only because our father insists. Tyrion gave a short bow. I'm overwhelmed by your graciousness. Behind him, Bronn watched with a neutral expression. He could feel the eyes of the King's Guard upon him. He was no knight, and they knew he had bested a Knight of the Vale in single combat. They might be sizing him up or merely looking down on him as a sellsword. So be it. Bronn's gaze flickered from face to face, reading what he could. Tension existed between the Queen and the imp, tension that could be exploited if the moment arose. In the days that followed, Tyrion established himself in the Tower of the Hand, issuing orders to the city watch, reshuffling the guard, and sifting through the labyrinth of intrigues. Bronn kept close, ever ready to unsheath his sword if necessary or to track certain individuals in the city's narrow lanes. Tyrion recognized in Bronn a lethal competence, but also an avarice that needed feeding. Each time Bronn performed a task, intimidating a gold-cloak captain, chasing down a rumored thief of Lannister property, Tyrion tossed him another bag of coin. For your loyalty, he'd say with a knowing glance. Bronn accepted it, but loyalty was a strong word. For now, Tyrion's star seemed to be rising. Protecting him meant gold and the occasional taste of power, but only a fool believed it would last forever. As the weeks turned to months, the war raged outside the city's walls. King's Landing churned with fear, especially when rumors arrived that Stannis' fleet was amassing at Dragonstone, prepared to strike at the capital. The name Blackwater began to float in the corridors, whispers of a potential naval battle that could decide the fate of the Iron Throne. Cersei and Tyrion bickered incessantly in council chambers. Joffrey grew more petulant and cruel by the day, staging pointless demonstrations of his authority. Men swarmed the capital from the countryside, seeking refuge or a chance at plunder. The city watch was stretched thin, and often Bronn found himself commanding 100 or more gold cloaks on Tyrion's behalf, patrolling the worst neighborhoods to quell riots and starvation-driven madness. In the secrecy of his private chambers, Tyrion assembled a plan for the defense of King's Landing. He had the Alchemist's Guild produce wildfire, which he intended to use in a cunning trap against Stannis' ships. He shared the plan with Bronn one night, over a table strewn with charts of the harbor. If all goes to plan, Tyrion said, Stannis' ships will be lured into the bay. We'll release a single, empty vessel packed with wildfire. A spark will set it ablaze, and the flames will spread from ship to ship. That should thin their numbers enough for our archers and catapults to devastate the survivors. Bronn had seen wildfire's destructive power. He nodded slowly. A bold strategy. But what if Stannis outmaneuvers us? Tyrion tapped the table. We have other contingencies. Boiling oil, archers on the walls, perhaps some scorpions to skewer any who try to land further down the coast. And, of course, if my father arrives with his army in time, Stannis will be crushed between hammer and anvil. Bronn leaned back, crossing his arms. You speak as though everything rests on cunning. But war can shift on a single moment. A betrayal, a wrong assumption, or a sellsword who chooses the other side. His eyes flickered to Tyrion, but the imp just smirked. I expect you to stay at my side, Tyrion said softly. I pay you well to do so, and I have no illusions about your moral code. I trust you precisely as far as my gold extends. Bronn let out a short laugh. That's far enough for now. But outside that chamber, whispers were circulating. Lord Peter Baelish, cunning as a fox, occasionally probed at Bronn, making veiled references to how a man of Bronn's abilities might rise quickly if he found the right patron. Varys, too, occasionally drifted by Bronn in a corridor, smiling enigmatically and hinting at secrets that could change the course of the war. Even Cersei had once commented, You're the sellsword who killed Ser Vardis Egen, yes? I've heard tales. If you ever want more direct employment, do let me know. Her smile had not touched her eyes. Then came the day, just weeks before Stannis' fleet was expected to arrive, when Bronn received a discreet summons to a small chamber near the Queen's apartments. He slipped inside, expecting some manner of intrigue. He found not Cersei, but a man he recognized as one of her most trusted agents, a haughty fellow named Osney Kettleblack. The man sat with a casual sprawl, flipping a coin between his fingers. When Bronn entered, Osney gave a mocking salute. Heard you're the best sellsword in the city, Osney said, tone thick with condescension. Got a proposition for you. Bronn cocked his head. I'm already employed, last I checked. Osney smirked. Not like this, you're not. The Queen has reason to doubt that Tyrion Lannister's presence is entirely beneficial to the realm. She knows well how cunning he is. Some might say too cunning. And we also know about the wildfire plot, the chain he's having forged across the harbor, all these little secrets. The Queen wonders if perhaps you'd like to ensure a different outcome. If Tyrion were removed, well, the Queen would be grateful. She might see fit to reward the man who helped rid the kingdom of a schemer. Bronn's face remained neutral, though his mind burned. Is that so? And what might that reward look like? Osney shrugged. Gold, naturally. Properties in the Crownlands. Even a knighthood, if you prove valuable enough. Sellswords dream of more than a few coins in a pouch, don't they? Bronn said softly. We dream of comfort, of never having to risk our necks for the next meal. He said no more, but let the idea take shape in the quiet space between them. He left that room with the weight of a new choice. Betraying Tyrion would be a serious move, likely leading to chaos in the city's defenses. But perhaps that was what Cersei wanted, for Tyrion's carefully laid plans to fail, leaving her in a position to blame him for any ensuing disaster and tighten her own grip on power. Bronn had no illusions that Cersei cared about him. But if he could parlay her interest into something substantial, perhaps a keep and lands out in a region not likely to be ravaged by war, that might be worth considering. Night fell on King's Landing, blanketing the twisting alleys and stinking gullies in darkness. Bronn prowled along the battlements above the Blackwater Bay, gazing out at the dark waves. Torches glimmered along the walls, and the city behind him murmured with the restless stir of thousands. The war felt close, as if a storm hung on the horizon, waiting to break. And in that tension, Bronn could sense that the moment for a pivot was near. If he was going to betray Tyrion, it would need to be soon enough that the Queen could neutralize the dwarf's elaborate defenses before Stannis arrived. If he waited too long, any betrayal would be pointless. Tyrion might have already secured victory, or the city might fall, leaving no one to pay Bronn's price. He thought of Tyrion's dry wit, his laughter that masked genuine fear, and the way the man had actually treated him with a measure of respect, more respect than Bronn had ever received from a highborn lord. Yet respect was intangible. Bronn wanted something real. Something that would ensure he could one day walk away from these battles and retire somewhere safe. When dawn broke, he made his decision. He was surprised how easy it felt, how slight the pang of regret. But a Sellsword's path was cutthroat, and the Lannister coin might run out. Cersei's promises, if backed by the wealth of the crown, could reshape his future. He first took a measure to ensure his own survival. Rather than walk into the Queen's chambers directly, he found Osney Kettleblack again in a corridor. Tell your mistress I'll do what she wants. But I want her oath on the property, on the knighthood, and on as much gold as she's promised. And I want a partial payment now, so I know she's not lying. Osney smirked but nodded. I'll arrange it. Thus, a plan was set in motion. Bronn would sabotage Tyrion's chain-laying operation on the Blackwater and see to it that certain barrels of wildfire were compromised. Then, when the time was right, Tyrion would be delivered into Cersei's hands, a quiet arrest or a bloody confrontation, whichever proved convenient. The Queen's men would ensure Tyrion was found guilty of treason or malfeasance, effectively removing him from the game before the battle. Once Tyrion was out of the picture, the city's defense would crumble or revert to a simpler shape, one that might fail in the face of Stannis's might, but Cersei apparently believed she could still manage victory or negotiation. That very night, Bronn led a contingent of gold cloaks down to the docks where Tyrion had discreetly stationed workers forging the massive chain links. The Imp's plan involved stretching an enormous chain across the width of the Blackwater Bay to trap Stannis's fleet. If used in tandem with wildfire, it could create a deadly gauntlet. Tyrion had entrusted Bronn with overseeing security for the project. But Bronn's men, paid off by the Queen, forcibly dispersed the workers. Under the cover of darkness, the half-forged chain links were hammered out of shape and tossed into the harbor, the molds and forges smashed. By morning, the chain was a wreck. Tyrion was furious. He stood by the battered forges, the sea wind whipping at his hair, while the workers gave fearful accounts of an unknown group of gold cloaks who had attacked them. This reeks of sabotage. Tyrion snapped, fists clenched. I want the men responsible found and flayed if need be. Bronn feigned anger and confusion. I'll question the watch commanders, see if any of them let their men off duty last night, he promised. But with tensions this high, half the city could be planning sabotage. Tyrion ground his teeth, suspecting Cersei's hand in this, but lacking proof. He looked at Bronn with something that bordered on distrust, but he kept his counsel. Over the next few days, Tyrion tried to salvage the chain plan, but time was short. Stannis's fleet approached swiftly, sails looming on the horizon. The wildfire was still an option, but the deadly synergy of the chain had been lost. With the chain ruined, Tyrion pivoted. He arranged for dozens of smaller skiffs filled with wildfire to be set afloat in the bay, a riskier plan that would rely on precise timing. Every soldier was on edge. Cersei roamed the Red Keep, ensuring all loyal to her were well aware that if Tyrion's plan failed, the blame fell on him alone. Some in the castle whispered that the dwarf's luck was finally running dry, that the queen intended to cast him as a traitor if the battle turned against them. The night before Stannis' ships came into view, Bronn took one more step in betrayal. He slipped into the Alchemist's Guild vault with the help of men loyal to the queen. One by one, the crucial casks of wildfire that Tyrion intended to send drifting into the bay were sabotaged, some emptied, some partially doused to ruin their potency. Not all, for that would rouse immediate suspicion, but enough that the chain reaction Tyrion desired would fizzle. It was a gamble. If too many casks failed, Stannis' fleet might break through easily. But that was apparently the queen's preference, or perhaps she had some arrangement or plan to handle a victory by Stannis. Or maybe she believed the Lannister armies outside the city could still arrive in time. Bronn didn't care. His end of the deal was to ensure Tyrion's grand scheme collapsed. The rest was Cersei's problem. At dawn, trumpets blared. Stannis Baratheon's fleet appeared on the horizon, war galleys bristling with scorpions and carrying thousands of men. King's Landing quivered like a stressed bowstring. Men rushed to battlements, archers took positions, the Hound and his men guarded the gates, and Tyrion Lannister stood atop the walls, scanning the bay. He looked for Bronn, his most trusted sellsword, who was supposed to command a portion of the city watch near the quay. But Bronn was nowhere to be seen, having excused himself on some errand. Instead, Tyrion saw uneasy goldcloaks awaiting orders, all of them uncertain. When the fleet drew near, the first wave of Tyrion's plan was set into motion. A handful of wildfire-laden skiffs were pushed out, drifting into the midst of Stannis' lead ships. Tyrion signaled for the archers to ignite them. Flaming arrows whistled, streaking through the air. 1, 2, 3 ships exploded in a bright green inferno, the wildfire dancing across the water's surface with lethal grace. Men screamed, the bay choked with smoke, and for a moment, the defenders cheered. But then, to Tyrion's horror, half the skiffs did not ignite in the same fearsome surge. Some sputtered, producing only minor bursts of flame that died quickly. Others simply failed to catch fire at all. With no chain to hold them in place, Stannis' remaining ships maneuvered around the burning wreckage. The great advantage of the trap was lost. Tyrion cursed. "Why aren't they catching?" he shouted at the alchemists. "They're doused in wildfire." The alchemists babbled about sabotage, defective batches, or incorrectly sealed casks. Tyrion's mind reeled. Had his sister done this? Or Joffrey, or some other cunning lord? He had prepared for a partial failure, but not on this scale. Stannis' ships pressed forward, though some still fought green flame licking at their sails. The City Watch archers tried to rain arrows onto the decks, but it was not enough to halt the advance. Meanwhile, on another portion of the wall, Bronn watched from a parapet, arms folded. Osney Kettleblack stood beside him. "I hope you're ready to finish it," Osney hissed. "The Queen wants him arrested by nightfall, assuming we're still in control. She wants him blamed for the city's downfall, if Stannis breaks through." Bronn nodded, though he could not entirely banish a sour taste in his mouth. Tyrion, for all his talk, had been an oddly decent sort of master. But sentiment would not buy him a future. Gold and rank would. The sea battle raged. Stannis' men landed on the shores near the Mudgate. Fierce fighting erupted in the shallows. The Hound led a foray outside the gates, but the combination of fear and the blazing wreckage on the water unnerved him. He retreated, cursing the flames. Tyrion, desperate, donned armor and went out himself to rally the men, cutting down a knight with a savage slash. For a moment, he brought hope to the defenders. Then came the horns from the north. They announced the arrival of King Joffrey on the battlements, flanked by a portion of the Kingsguard. But even Joffrey's presence did little to inspire the City Watch, who were disorganized and frightened by the partial success and catastrophic failure of the wildfire plan. Some men shouted that the battle was lost. Others carried on, buoyed by the knowledge that Lannister reinforcements might be marching closer. Bronn saw Tyrion in the fray, saw the imp's helmet knocked askew, saw blood streaking the side of his face. Tyrion was fighting desperately to hold the line. There, in the chaos, would be the perfect moment for an accident. If Tyrion fell in battle, that would serve the Queen's aims just as well as any arrest. Summoning a few of his men, Bronn led them down the ramparts and into the yard, weaving through panicked soldiers. The clang of steel on steel rang in the air. Smoke stung his eyes. He spotted Tyrion near a battered ram that Stannis' men were trying to bring to the gate. The dwarf was hacking at ankles, stepping nimbly aside as a Baratheon bannerman swung a warhammer. Tyrion ducked, drove his blade into the man's thigh, and yanked it free amid a spray of blood. Shouts erupted as another wave of attackers splashed ashore. Tyrion was caught off guard for a split second. Bronn seized his chance. He gave a nod to the pair of goldcloaks who were in on the plot. The two men rushed forward through the swirling melee, swords raised, as though they were coming to assist Tyrion. Instead, one swung his blade at the dwarf's back with lethal intent. At the last instant, Tyrion sensed something amiss and twisted aside. The blow glanced off his armor, staggering him. He stumbled into the mud, rolling as a second slash came in, aimed for his neck. He raised his own sword to block, crying out in horror and confusion. "You traitorous dog!" Tyrion roared, not yet seeing who had attacked him, only hearing the clash of steel. The second goldcloak reared back for another blow. Before Tyrion could blink, Podrick Payne, Tyrion's loyal squire, sprang into the fray. Young, awkward Pod thrust a spear at the attacking goldcloak, piercing through the man's side. The traitor let out a gurgling scream and fell. The first goldcloak turned to face Pod. Bronn stood a few paces away, sword in hand. He felt a flicker of conflict within him. Killing Tyrion then, and there was precisely what would earn him the Queen's reward. Yet something about it, seeing the dwarf scrabbling in the mud, fighting valiantly, gave him pause. No, he told himself, there's no going back. He advanced, shoving aside a dying man, raising his sword to end Tyrion's life. Then a horn blast cut through the cacophony. The sound was deep and unmistakable. From the hills behind King's Landing, thousands of horsemen emerged in the Lannister gold and red. Tywin Lannister's forces at last arrived. Alongside him flew the sigil of House Tyrell. Mace Tyrell and his formidable knights had joined the Lannister cause. A roar went up from the walls and from the streets as word spread that reinforcements had come. Panic rippled through Stannis' front lines. Tyrion struggled to his feet, battered. He saw Bronn approaching with blade raised. There was confusion in Bronn's face, swiftly replaced by grim determination. Tyrion realized with a shock that Bronn's stance was not that of a protector but of an attacker. He began, voice raw. Before he could utter another word, Podrick hurled himself at Bronn, trying to protect his lord. Bronn pivoted with lethal grace, striking Pod across the shoulder, sending the boy sprawling with a cry. Tyrion, half-blinded by sweat and blood, slashed wildly at Bronn, his strike easily parried. "I'm sorry, imp," Bronn growled and lunged. Tyrion managed to spin aside, but the force of the blow knocked him back into the mud. That was when a fresh wave of riders thundered out of the gate, led by the hulking form of Ser Mandon Moore of the Kingsguard, an ally or a foe, Tyrion could not tell. The chaos was total. Stannis' men were in retreat near the gate, harassed by cavalry, while other loyalists converged on the traitorous goldcloaks who had dared raise arms against the Hand. Bronn, seeing more men streaming in, realized his moment of surprise was gone. If he continued, he might end up cut down. He spat a curse and kicked Tyrion's sword away, forcing the dwarf to scramble in the filth. Bronn considered finishing him off, but a wave of new Lannister knights bore down, banners snapping. There was no time. Bronn snarled, turning, and fled into the mayhem. He vanished amid the press of men, switching surcoats to blend in with the goldcloaks who still fought loyally. In the swirling confusion, none realized it was he who had tried to kill Tyrion. Tyrion collapsed, breath ragged, battered by the betrayal. He caught a glimpse of Podrick, who was alive but bleeding profusely. The dwarf crawled to his squire, pressing a hand to the wound in horror. He shouted for a maester, for help, for anything. The thunder of hooves and the screams of the dying formed a hellish backdrop. Finally, as the day wore on, Stannis' forces broke under the combined assault of Tywin and the Tyrells. The rebel king himself fled, carried away by his loyal knights. The Blackwater was thick with wreckage and bodies. King's Landing was saved, or so it seemed. But the cost was steep, the city battered, and Tyrion was left in critical condition. When the dust settled and the bells rang out for victory, no one sang Tyrion's praises. Instead, rumors spread that his sabotage of the city's defenses had nearly cost them everything, and that only the timely arrival of Tywin and Mace Tyrell had saved the day. Cersei took care to spread the tale that Tyrion had bungled the wildfire plan, that if he had succeeded, the entire fleet of Stannis would have been destroyed. Instead, half the casks failed, leaving the city at the brink of ruin until the last-minute reinforcements. Within the Red Keep, the mood was jubilant for Joffrey's victory but sour toward Tyrion's role. Tyrion lay in a feverish delirium for days, Maester Franken applying poultices to his head wound, while Podrick's recovery was uncertain. Visitors were kept away, partly by the Maester's orders, partly by Cersei's edict. The Queen seized control of the narrative, claiming that Tyrion was a traitor, that it was only by the gods when he hadn't outright handed the city to Stannis. She demanded an inquest, though Tywin was hesitant to let the matter overshadow their new alliance with House Tyrell. Bronn, meanwhile, kept his head down. He collected his partial payment in gold as promised and received a quiet meeting with the Queen, who congratulated him on his efforts. She expressed regret Tyrion had survived, but assured Bronn that he would be rewarded for whatever role he played in the sabotage. She didn't knight him yet, the city was in chaos and the formalities needed the king's presence. But she gave him a sealed writ promising lands near Rosby as well as a purse heavy with golden dragons. She also gave him a lethal smile. When the time is right, we'll deal with my brother once and for all. You'll have your title and your keep. Bronn bowed, arms pressed to his sides to feign respect. Yet a coil of tension remained in him. He had turned on Tyrion, yes, but the dwarf still lived. Perhaps that meant the final blow was yet to fall. In the aftermath of the battle, the realm's politics shifted rapidly. With Highgarden now allied to King's Landing, the Lannisters had gained a powerful partner. Renly Baratheon was dead, Stannis was wounded, Robb Stark raged in the north with diminishing allies, and Balon Greyjoy lurked on the Isles. The war was by no means over, but the balance had tipped. A fortnight later, Tyrion awoke in a dark chamber. One side of his face was bandaged, and he could not move without pain lancing through his body. Podrick lay in another bed across the room, breathing shallowly, though alive. Ser Mandon Moore stood guard by the door, face impassive. A single candle flickered on a table. Tyrion tried to sit up, but the pain in his ribs made him gasp. Memory returned in jagged shards, the sabotage, the partial failure of the wildfire, the traitorous gold cloaks attacking him, Bronn with his sword raised. "Bronn," he rasped, voice cracking. "Where's Bronn?" Ser Mandon Moore did not answer. The maester, summoned by Tyrion's voice, stepped in and gently pressed him to lie still. "The Queen has placed you under watch," Franken said quietly. "She claims you endangered the city with your reckless plan. Her men say it was your sabotage that cost many lives. She wants you tried for treason if your father agrees. But Lord Tywin is reluctant. You are his son, after all, and he hates scandal." Tyrion's vision swam. He fought for clarity. "I need to speak to my father," he said. "I need to explain." Franken only shook his head. "The Queen controls access to your chambers. You are a prisoner of sorts, Lord Tyrion, though we call it protective custody." Tyrion clenched a fist. If it weren't for the pain, he'd be cursing the gods. Bronn's betrayal cut deeper than any sword. How had he not seen it coming? He was the clever one, the man who prided himself on reading others. He had trusted Bronn too much, or perhaps not enough to pay him everything he asked. Now Tyrion was near helpless, at the mercy of Cersei. Outside, the city bustled with victory celebrations. Joffrey named Margaery Tyrell his new betrothed. The crowds cheered for the might of House Tyrell and House Lannister, praising the glorious defeat of Stannis. They called Joffrey the savior of the city and Tywin the hero who rode in at the last moment. Tyrion's own contributions were lost, overshadowed, and twisted into accusations of sabotage. No trial had yet been scheduled. Tywin understood that condemning his son might reflect badly on House Lannister, so he let Cersei keep Tyrion contained for the time being, uncertain how to handle the matter. Tyrion's friends were few. Varys might have sympathies, but the spider only acted if it served his grand designs. Littlefinger was absent, journeying to parley with the Arryns. Cersei had the city watch in her palm, and Joffrey was all too pleased to see Tyrion disgraced. While Tyrion languished, Bronn used his gold to secure a comfortable apartment in the city's west side, near the gate leading to Rosby. He drank, caroused, and weighed his next moves. The Queen had praised him but had yet to openly knight him. When he inquired, her new confidant, Tina of Myr, told him the queen simply preferred not to alarm certain lords with a Sellsword's sudden elevation, especially while Tyrion's fate hung in the balance. "We must handle politics delicately," Tina said, "but your reward is assured." Bronn mulled it over, enjoying the spoils of his partial success for now, but feeling a sting that his ambitions were on hold. He had done what was asked, so why the delay? And he also had to watch his back. Some of the gold cloaks who participated in the sabotage had died in the confusion of battle. Others might talk. If word leaked that Bronn was the primary orchestrator, who knew what might happen? War might allow men to vanish easily, but it also let loose conspiracies that could devour their architects. A shift occurred when Tywin Lannister summoned a private council to discuss the fate of his dwarf son. Cersei was present, as was the king, along with a handful of trusted advisors, including the ever-watchful Varys and Lord Mace Tyrell. Tyrion, still weak, was brought in under guard. His bandages had been replaced with fresh linen, his face half hidden beneath them, but his eyes burned with fierce intelligence. Tywin stared hard at Tyrion. "My son, the Queen presents disturbing evidence that you deliberately sabotaged your own plan to secure credit for a victory that never came in the form you boasted. Men say you orchestrated the partial failure of the wildfire, nearly allowing Stannis' men to breach the gates. Your own champion is nowhere to be found to testify on your behalf." Tyrion tried to keep his tone steady. "Father, I had no reason to sabotage my own plan. It was my chain, my wildfire. Why would I sabotage it and risk my life? I was nearly killed in the battle. Indeed, men dressed in Goldcloak's garb attacked me from behind. I suspect the Queen's hand in that, or the hand of some traitors loyal to her. I was betrayed." He wanted to name Bronn, but he had no proof except what he'd seen in the chaos. And even that was a swirl of madness. Cersei's lips curled. "Betrayed by your own men, or by yourself? Perhaps you always intended to shift the blame, so if you failed, you could cry sabotage." Tyrion glared at her. "Sister, please. My loyalty to House Lannister should never have been in doubt. I delivered Myrcella safely to Dorne. I stabilized the City Watch. I arranged the forging of the chain, before it was destroyed by unknown saboteurs. Who else but you had motive to hamper my efforts? Do you not recall your own threat to me? That if I overstepped, you would not hesitate to see me removed?" Joffrey sneered from the Iron Throne, which had been dragged to the council chamber for the occasion. "You speak treason to the Queen Regent, imp." Tywin glanced at Mace Tyrell, who was sipping wine with a bored expression. The alliance with the Tyrells was Tywin's main priority now. Disgracing Tyrion too publicly might cause some measure of scandal, but letting him go unpunished could allow a wedge of doubt within their new allies. Tywin stood, the scrape of his heavy chair on stone resounding ominously. "Enough," Tywin said. "Tyrion, your position as Hand of the King is revoked. Your sister will continue to act as regent, with my assistance. You will remain confined to your chambers until further notice. If the men we sent to investigate the sabotage find evidence of your wrongdoing, you will stand trial for treason. If they find no evidence, you shall remain in custody until the war's end. Is that understood?" Tyrion clenched his jaw. "Perfectly." He was escorted away, anger and bitterness curdling his insides. Cersei's sly smile followed him like a phantom. By the time he reached his chambers, escorted by 2 Kingsguard knights, Tyrion's mind was awhirl with thoughts of vengeance. He had always known the game was dangerous, that a single misstep or betrayal could cost him everything. Still, this cut deeper than he'd imagined. That Bronn, his hired sword, could be turned so easily. Perhaps it shouldn't have surprised him. Gold was gold, after all. As the capital continued to reel from the aftermath of the battle, news spread through the realm. Robb Stark had scored another victory in the west, capturing key Lannister bannermen, but was bogged down by the betrayal of his bannerman Roose Bolton, who was negotiating a separate peace. The Greyjoys had raided up the coasts, sowing confusion. Mace Tyrell returned triumphantly to Highgarden for a time, proclaiming the might of his house. Stannis licked his wounds on Dragonstone, rumored to be delving deeper into his Red Priestess's dark magics. And in King's Landing, the Queen Regent grew comfortable hosting feasts in honor of the victory. It was during one of these feasts that Bronn stood near a pillar in the royal banquet hall wearing a fine doublet he'd purchased with Cersei's gold. He sipped arbor red, surveying the lords and ladies dancing in the torchlit hall. He felt strangely out of place. He belonged among the rowdy sellswords in the taverns of Flea Bottom, not amid the perfumed aristocrats. Yet here he was. A few men shot him disdainful looks. They knew he was no knight, just a man who'd somehow earned favor from the queen. But none dared speak openly of it. Cersei herself danced with Loras Tyrell, part of a new wave of alliances. Joffrey was seated at the dais, picking at a roast quail. From across the room, Varys regarded Bronn with a half-lidded gaze. The spider glided closer, robes whispering across the floor. "A fine evening," Varys said softly. "The realm celebrates the defeat of Stannis, yet we still have so many wars left to fight, do we not?" Bronn eyed him warily. "War is good for business for some." "For some," Varys agreed. "And for others it ends in disappointment. I wonder, sir, excuse me, you are not a knight yet. Master Bronn, perhaps?" "Yes, I wonder if you've found everything you were promised. You have the queen's favor, but do you have the future security you crave?" Bronn gave a half-smirk, swirling the wine in his cup. "I'll have it soon. The queen keeps her word." "Does she?" Varys mused. "I've known many who believe that, only to find themselves short a head later on. Or perhaps short a reward. Our dear queen is not known for her generosity toward those she deems expendable." "I'm not expendable," Bronn said. "She needs me." Varys's painted lips curved in a smile. "For now. But your usefulness might wane once she fully secures her power. Or once she no longer fears Tyrion's influence. I wonder if a man such as you, cunning and skilled, might regret burning bridges too soon." Bronn stiffened. He wanted to snap back, but he merely downed his wine and turned away. Varys glided off, humming. The spider's insinuations lit an uneasy spark in Bronn's belly. Could Cersei discard him once Tyrion was permanently out of the picture? Possibly. And Tyrion, did the imp have a path to redemption, a cunning scheme to restore himself? If so, Bronn might have just placed himself on the wrong side of it. Days later, word came that Tywin was preparing for a major campaign, leading forces westward to relieve the sieges near Riverrun and crush the remaining Stark bannermen. Cersei remained in King's Landing, controlling the capital with Joffrey. Tyrion was effectively under house arrest, guarded day and night. Rumors circulated that the dwarf might soon be tried for treason, or exiled, or quietly executed. The question on everyone's lips, would Tywin allow his son's disgrace? Or would he intervene? Then came a night that changed everything. A riot broke out in Flea Bottom over bread shortages, culminating in the murder of several gold cloaks. The unrest spread like wildfire through the cramped districts. Angry mobs marched toward the Red Keep, chanting curses at the Lannisters. Cersei had grown careless in celebrating victory while the small folk starved. Joffrey, furious at the insults, ordered the gold cloaks to disperse the crowds by force. Blood flowed in the streets. The situation threatened to become a full-scale revolt. Amid the confusion, an unexpected twist occurred. A group of conspirators loyal to Tyrion, men once bribed or bound to him in the City Watch, sprang into action. They seized an opportunity, sneaking past the guards in the Tower of the Hand and freeing Tyrion from confinement. These men had little love for Cersei, and a well-placed stash of gold from Tyrion's old arrangements gave them the impetus to gamble. They escorted the dwarf down a secret passage. Tyrion, still wounded but resolute, hobbled through the darkness, breathing in the dank smell of hidden corridors that snaked under the Red Keep. When they emerged in a less guarded courtyard, Tyrion took a shaky breath. "Where's Bronn?" he demanded, though part of him already knew the answer. "We think he's working for the queen," said one of the watchmen, spitting on the ground. "He won't be on your side, M-Lord." Tyrion clenched his jaw, feeling a wash of bitterness. "Then we'll manage without him." They slipped out into the city, using the chaos of the riots as cover. Tyrion had no illusions. He was in grave danger. If the queen learned he'd escaped, she'd send men after him. But if he stayed hidden long enough, perhaps he could find allies among the clansmen in the hills near the Vale, or contact those in the Westerlands loyal to him rather than Tywin. Tyrion's cunning mind mapped out a dozen potential moves. So long as he lived, the game was not lost. Bronn, at that very moment, stood on the walls of the Red Keep, looking down at the rioters and the City Watch engaged in brutal street battles. Flaming torches cast hellish shadows across the rooftops. Screams echoed. He felt a hollow pang. This was exactly the kind of chaos that could shift fortunes in an instant. A messenger ran up to him, breathless. "My lord, Master Bronn, the dwarf has escaped." Bronn whipped around. "Tyrion." The messenger nodded. "He's gone." Some of the watch turned traitor and whisked him away. "The queen demands he be found or killed on sight." She says you're responsible for hunting him down. Bronn stared into the night, the flicker of fires lighting his features. So Tyrion was free, likely fleeing King's Landing. The Queen wanted him dead. Bronn recalled Tyrion's jokes, his cunning, the half-smile he'd often worn when discussing grand designs. The Queen's reward beckoned, but how many more betrayals would it take before it came? And would it even be real when the dust settled? Down in the streets, the mob roared. A fresh wave of violence broke out by the gates. Bronn closed his eyes for a heartbeat, imagining the lines of possible futures. If Tyrion rallied forces somehow and returned, there could be a high price on Bronn's head. If Cersei stamped out the last of Tyrion's supporters, she might cast Bronn aside once he was no longer needed. Sel's words didn't enjoy the same immunity as High Lords. And if the war turned yet again, as wars often did, he took a breath and signaled for his men. "Let's go," he said. "We hunt for the imp." But he wasn't sure whether he truly meant to find him or to let him slip away. Thus was the realm thrown into turmoil, all because of a moment's betrayal on the Blackwater. The war would rage on, lines redrawn, alliances shifting like quicksand. Bronn had gained gold and favor in the short term, yet the future felt uncertain. Tyrion lurked somewhere in the city or the countryside beyond, wounded but alive, plotting vengeance, or simply trying to survive. Cersei grew bolder, consolidating power, but her unpopularity among the small folk was turning ugly. In the months that followed, the War of the Five Kings took new shape. Tywin Lannister's westward campaign clashed with Robb Stark's forces in a series of bloody engagements. The Tyrells guarded their own interests, eyeing the capital warily. Stannis brooded, rebuilding his strength at Dragonstone. Balon Greyjoy ravaged the North's coasts, taking advantage of the chaos. King Joffrey, more vicious than ever, terrorized the court while his mother looked on approvingly. She had Bronn at her beck and call, but still withheld his formal knighthood. She wanted him hungry, reliant on her favor. Meanwhile, Tyrion drifted through the shadows like a ghost. He hid among the common folk at times, or in the secret rooms of sympathetic minor lords, using bribes and favors to keep out of sight. He gathered rumors of how Bronn had orchestrated the chain's destruction and wildfire sabotage. Each new piece of information tightened the knot of anger in his belly. One night, while holed up in a dingy room above a blacksmith's forge in the outskirts of King's Landing, Tyrion confided in Podrick Payne, who had recovered from his wound enough to accompany him. "I should have known," Tyrion said bitterly. "He was never mine. I was just the highest bidder for a while." Podrick looked pained. "He saved us in the Vale, my lord. He fought well in your name." "Yes," Tyrion said, voice heavy, "until someone else offered more." Podrick asked the question that had haunted Tyrion's own thoughts. "How will you answer him if you ever meet again?" Tyrion regarded the boy, the question floating in the smoky air. "We may meet again, Pod. The gods love a monstrous joke. If that day comes, I suppose I'll have to kill him." The dwarf let out a sigh. "Though I doubt that will be easy." So the stage was set. Tyrion, fueled by vengeance, plotted how to regain power, or, at the very least, how to survive and punish those who betrayed him. Bronn, flush with gold, grew uneasy with each passing day, uncertain whether the Queen truly valued his service, or if she was simply using him. The war raged, battles flared, and the common folk suffered. At Riverrun, Jaime Lannister was exchanged for Sansa Stark by a cunning deal engineered by Lord Baelish. The North burned under the onslaught of the Greyjoys and the betrayal of Roose Bolton. The crown tottered as new rumors of Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons found their way across the narrow sea. Through it all, Bronn occasionally caught himself wondering, had he chosen correctly? Yet one undeniable truth marked the realm. Had Tyrion not been betrayed by Bronn, the Battle of the Blackwater might have been a decisive victory for House Lannister's control, securing Tyrion's reputation as a brilliant defender. Instead, King's Landing had been saved primarily by Tywin and the Tyrells' timely arrival. Cersei's power had solidified, Tyrion was cast down, and the city was locked into a precarious peace, ready to explode again at the slightest provocation. Far from bringing stability, Bronn's betrayal ensured the war would be longer, bloodier, and filled with new treacheries. Sometime after the chaos settled into its new uneasy rhythm, Bronn stood on the walls of the Red Keep once more, gazing out at the roiling waters of Blackwater Bay. The sunrise painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, but the Sellsword felt no warmth in the view. He remembered how Tyrion once stood at this very spot, joking about the city stench, the madness of kings, and the power of coin. He fingered the edge of his new doublet, the cloth finer than anything he'd worn before. He felt the weight of the heavy gold purse on his belt, Cersei's favor. Yet in that moment he felt oddly hollow. Tyrion might still be in the city or far away, plotting. The Queen still withheld the final piece of Bronn's promised reward, lands, a true title, a place in the aristocracy that would free him from the day-to-day risk of wearing a sword for a living. He might never get it. Or if he did, it might come at the cost of more betrayal, more blood, more sacrifices. He turned and descended the steps to the yard, ignoring the stares of passing knights. His footsteps echoed on the stone. He told himself this was what he wanted, that a Sellsword's code was simple: follow the money. He had followed it to the top, or near enough. Yet the game was not done. Cersei might discard him tomorrow, or Tyrion might appear with some cunning plan to see Bronn's head on a spike. The war had many turns yet to come. In the dim stillness before the city fully awoke, Bronn wondered if, given the chance to do it over, he would still have raised his sword to strike down the imp. He did not know. The only thing certain was that the War of the Five Kings had become something else entirely once a single man made the choice to betray Tyrion Lannister for higher pay. Now, as conflict spread across the Seven Kingdoms, the consequences of that single betrayal echoed in every corner of the realm, prolonging the fighting, twisting alliances, and leaving countless lives in the balance. High above the battlements, the new royal banners snapped in the sea breeze, the golden lion of Lannister and the golden rose of Tyrell intertwined. But beneath those proud sigils, the true story writhed like a pit of vipers: a queen's ambition, a father's cold will, a disgraced dwarf's thirst for vengeance, and a Sellsword who had sold his loyalty for promises he was no longer sure would ever be kept. The war would grind on, and who emerged victorious would hinge not only on steel and gold, but on the subtle coils of deceit that had been laid. And Bronn, sword at his side, felt the weight of that deceit in every step he took, each coin jangling in his purse a reminder of the price he'd paid, and the price he might yet have to pay, for having chosen the side of betrayal. Bronn left the Red Keep's ramparts that morning with every intention of hunting Tyrion Lannister as ordered, if only to remain in Queen Cersei's good graces. Yet doubt not at him. The gold in his purse felt heavier than usual, as though weighed down by the knowledge of what he had done. He had always been a man of shifting loyalties, but something about betraying Tyrion, the only noble who had ever treated him like more than a disposable sword, left a bitter aftertaste. He gathered half a dozen men from the city watch who had proven as eager for bribes as they were for blood. Some had participated in the sabotage of the wildfire. Others were new recruits, anxious to please whomever commanded them. Like Bronn, they had no scruples about scouring the city to find the imp if the queen wished it. Duty was a scarce thing in King's Landing, after all, while coin spoke loudly. Their first search took them deep into Flea Bottom, though the warren of muddy alleys was rife with chaos. The riots had subsided into sullen resentment, but tensions still crackled in the air. Smoke lingered over gutted hovels. The reek of stale wine and rotting fish clogged the narrow lanes. Roaming packs of scrawny children dashed away at the sight of armed men. Doors slammed. No one wanted to speak to the Goldcloaks, especially not to Bronn. He pressed on, questioning half a dozen surly shopkeepers, slipping a coin or two to local touts. Those wretches always seemed to know something if they were paid enough. Yet no one gave him a trace of Tyrion. If the dwarf was in the city, he was well hidden. Bronn's men cursed as they tromped through mud and refuse. After hours of fruitless searching, they found themselves near an old September. The broad steps of the building had been scorched in the riots, its once painted doors charred and broken. Bronn spat into the gutter, scanning the street. He wondered if Tyrion, cunning as he was, might have secret places far from prying eyes, perhaps the cellar of a wine sink or one of Varys's hidden tunnels. The city abounded with labyrinths beneath its foundations. A reluctant woodcutter told them of a rumor. 3 nights ago, a small group of men led a cloaked figure out of the city's gate of the gods. They might have bribed the guards to keep quiet. If so, Tyrion was likely gone, his trail lost in the sprawl of roads beyond the walls. Bronn weighed what to do next. Returning empty-handed to the queen would not please her, but there was no help for it. If Tyrion had fled, hunting him down in the countryside would be a far more difficult endeavor. Unless the queen gave him 100 men and free rein, there would be no guarantee of success. And even if he found Tyrion, did he truly want to drag him back? The notion brought an uncomfortable twist to his gut. He took the rumor back to the Red Keep. In the queen's presence, flanked by Osney Kettleblack and a pair of silent guards, Bronn kept his report simple. "We found no trace of the imp within the city, your grace," he said, offering a short bow. "Word is he may have slipped out a few nights ago." Cersei's green eyes narrowed. She was clad in a gown of crimson silk, her golden hair elaborately braided. "May have?" she repeated, voice sharp. "That's no confirmation. You waste my time, Sellsword." Bronn suppressed his irritation. The gate guards claim ignorance, but coin changes hands easily in these parts. "I'll keep watch in case he tries to return. But if he's fled, then he's likely long gone into the countryside." Cersei waved a hand. "If he attempts to cross into Lannister territory, my father's men will catch him. If he seeks refuge with the Tyrells, they'll surely deliver him to us to secure favor. And if he goes north, the roads are rife with outlaws. Let him freeze or starve for all I care." She settled back on her chair, a slight smile curling her lips. "You did well enough at the Blackwater, Bronn, though your final assignment remains incomplete. Still, I'll not forget your service. See to it you remain vigilant. If Tyrion reappears, I expect you to finish what you started. In time, I'll see you properly rewarded." Her tone brimmed with condescension. Bronn inclined his head. "As you say, your grace." He withdrew from her presence, ignoring the smug look Osney Kettleblack gave him. They were all graspers at court, looking to climb the ladder. He had merely joined the crowd. Yet he had not secured that knighthood or keep, until the queen bestowed something more permanent than a purse of gold. He lingered in an uneasy limbo. That night, he drank himself into a stupor at a brothel along the Street of Silk. The older he grew, the more hollow those pleasures seemed. He tried to chase the thoughts of betrayal away with sour red wine, tried to silence the memory of Tyrion's face twisted in pain. He had chosen this path. It was done. All that remained was to see how it played out. Meanwhile, Tyrion was indeed beyond the city walls, riding north in a simple wagon with 4 loyal companions from the city watch who had turned against the queen. They traveled by night, avoiding well-trodden roads. Tyrion's side still ached from his injuries at the Blackwater, and his head wound had not healed cleanly. At times, fever dreams haunted him, remembering the green flames on the river, the crash of shields, the sting of betrayal when Bronn's sword came for him instead of defending him. Podrick Payne sat in the wagon with him, eyes wide, ever watchful of trouble. A thick bandage was wrapped around Pod's left shoulder. Yet despite his youth, he kept a keen lookout, occasionally helping drive the horses. Tyrion found some grim amusement in how the boy remained so loyal. What had he ever done to deserve such faith from Podrick? "You can still leave if you wish," Tyrion murmured to him one evening as they made camp in a stand of old birch trees. "I have little coin. My name is tarnished, my enemies are many. If you ride for, say, Riverrun, you might find safer employ under the Tullus." Podrick just shook his head. "I pledged myself to you, my lord. It wouldn't feel right to break that pledge." Tyrion managed a small, pained smile. "Then you're the only soul left in the 7 kingdoms who keeps their word." His voice dropped, heavy with regret. "I've always known a Sellsword's loyalty could shift. I only wish, well, I suppose it doesn't matter now. Bronn's knives are no longer mine." Pod ventured carefully. "What will you do if we encounter him again?" Tyrion stared into the small campfire's flames. "I'm not sure. Part of me wishes to see him strung up for what he did. But another part recalls how the world works. Men like Bronn do what they must to survive." He gave a bitter laugh. "I was a fool to think gold alone would keep him." They continued north over the following weeks. News trickled in from travelers and the occasional small folk they encountered. King's Landing was celebrating victory still, though the small folk starved, and Cersei was rumored to be consolidating power within the Red Keep. Tywin Lannister had taken half the Lannister host to the Western Theater, clashing with Robb Stark's outnumbered forces near the Trident. Stannis was said to be rebuilding at Dragonstone, dabbling in dark sorceries with his Red Priestess. Balon Greyjoy harried the North's coasts. The entire realm remained in flux. Tyrion pondered his next move. He had no illusions that Robb Stark would welcome him. The boy king in the North had no love for Lannisters, especially after the catastrophes that had befallen his family. Daenerys Targaryen might be an option if Tyrion could slip across the narrow sea, but the voyage alone would be perilous, and rumors suggested she was far away in Slaver's Bay with only 3 young dragons and a ragtag Khalasar. The safest path, ironically, might be to contact certain bannermen of the Westerlands who disliked Tywin's iron rule. Not all of Tywin's vassals loved him. Some might see advantage in sheltering the exiled imp, particularly if they guessed there would be a future confrontation within House Lannister itself. At last, Tyrion settled on a plan. He would head for the mountains near the Vale, where once he had found a measure of safety among the clans. Their fierce chieftains had marched with him briefly when he served as the Hand, lured by gold and the promise of arms. If he could reach them again, perhaps they would shelter him, especially if he offered something more enticing, like vengeance upon the Vale Lords who once scorned them. It was a risk, but everywhere was a risk now, and the mountain clans, for all their barbaric ways, understood a clear offer of mutual benefit. He could bide his time, gather a small retinue, and see what might be done to strike at those who had wronged him. He was hardly the sort of man to let an injury pass without an answer. They traveled slowly, for Tyrion's injuries limited him from riding fast, and the roads near the Vale were fraught with bandits. One dusk, they were forced to hide in the brush while a column of armed men in House Bolton livery marched by, though what Bolton was doing so far south none could say. Another day, they had to bribe a group of hedge knights who claimed to be collecting tolls for the Starks. Tyrion parted with his last gold dragons to secure safe passage, cursing under his breath at how far he had fallen. Eventually, they reached the foothills leading toward the Mountains of the Moon, with their jagged peaks and treacherous passes. Here, the nights were colder, the days shorter. Tyrion recalled the clan chieftains. Shagga, son of Dolf, the fearsome warrior who liked to threaten to chop off men's manhoods and feed them to the goats. Timett, son of Timett, the eyeless killer from the Burned Men. They were savage, but they had a code of sorts. If he could reunite with them, it might be that they would protect him once more, for the right price. His party entered a narrow gorge one morning, hoarfrost clinging to the rocks. A hush fell over them as they passed between cliffs. If the Stone Crows or Burned Men were anywhere near, they would see the travelers long before the travelers spotted them. Tyrion knew better than to ride at speed. He forced his aching body to maintain a posture that suggested confidence, though his palms sweated around the reins. Pod's eyes darted about, scanning the heights. The other men had drawn swords and kept them at the ready. At midday, they heard a shout echoing from the cliffs above. Then another. Shadows shifted at the rim of the gorge. Tyrion could sense eyes upon him, and though he felt fear coil in his belly, he raised a hand and called out, "I am Tyrion, son of Tywin, friend to the clans of the mountains." His voice, ragged from days of poor sleep, reverberated along the rocks. "I come to speak with Shagga, Timett, or any other chieftain who would hear me." A moment of silence followed, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk. Then came the thunder of dislodged stones tumbling down from above, as figures emerged from hidden perches along the gorge's edge. Rough men in furs and mismatched armor descended with practiced agility. Their blades were crude but formidable long axes, spiked maces, swords notched from 100 fights. At their heads strode a thick, bearded warrior with braids decorated by animal bones. He halted a few paces from Tyrion's horse, hooking his thumbs into his belt. "You named Shagga, son of Dolf," the man said in a low growl. "I am Gunthor of the Stone Crows. Shagga is not here, but he will come if I call." "You have more to say, Lannister?" Tyrion tried to mask his relief. He recognized Gunthor from his time traveling with the Stone Crows. "Gunthor, we parted on good terms, if I recall. I gave you steel, gold, and you fought with me. I need your help again." Gunthor's eyes narrowed. "The last time we fought with you, we marched into the lion's den. We left with fewer men than we came. Some say the lion's help is worth less than the crow's piss. Tyrion mustered a polite smile. We had victories too, Gunthor, and plunder. I do not forget that I still owe your folk more arms, more gold. I have not returned empty-handed. That last claim was shaky, since Tyrion's gold had dwindled to a few coins. But if he could persuade them that more awaited, perhaps they would listen. Gunthor glanced at Tyrion's small retinue. For watchers, Podrick with his bandaged shoulder, and a single donkey cart carrying meager supplies. If the clansmen decided to attack, Tyrion's group would be butchered. "What do you want, imp?" "I want to live," Tyrion replied. "I want to show those who tried to kill me that their betrayal will not go unanswered. If you will shelter me in your mountains and keep me safe, I can promise you a finer reward than you've ever seen. My father, Tywin Lannister, he is old, and the realm is in chaos. Should events shift in my favor, there will be gold for you that your clan has never dreamed of." It was a bold promise, but Tyrion had become expert at spinning illusions. Gold was always out there somewhere, as long as one could seize it. He saw Gunthor's expression shift with interest. The man gestured for Tyrion to dismount. Then, with his stone crows forming a circle, they led the travelers deeper into the mountains to a hidden camp. There, tents and huts clustered around a winding stream. Dozens of clan warriors trained with battered axes or sharpened flint-tipped spears. Scrawny goats wandered among the rocks. By nightfall, Shagga himself arrived, striding into the torchlit camp with Timett and a pair of other chieftains in tow. Shagga was broader around the middle than Tyrion remembered, and his hair more tangled, but he greeted Tyrion with a booming laugh that set the crows flapping from nearby pines. "Little lion, you returned to the mountains after so long? Have you come to give us more steel?" Tyrion managed a weary grin. "If you'll have me, Shagga. I have foes on all sides, but I remember how bravely you fought when we parted Lady Arryn from her coin. Perhaps you and I can help each other once again." Timett, the grim chieftain of the burned men, remained silent, his empty eye socket giving him a fearsome aspect. Eventually, he spoke in a low voice. "We fought for you once. We left your battles when your father demanded we obey him too. We do not forget our dead. Will you pay for them now?" Tyrion swallowed. "I will pay for them, yes, when I regain my position. For now, I bring only my own meager coin. But if you keep me safe from my enemies, I will see to it that House Lannister's vaults are open to reward your loyalty. My father rules the Westerlands now, but if he were to fall, or if I were to inherit a piece of the lion's fortune, you might all prosper." Shagga scratched his thick beard. "So you want us to fight your father?" I recall him, an older lion with little sense of humor. "Shagga does not fear old men, but Tywin Lannister has many swords." Tyrion sighed. "I do not ask you to fight him directly, nor do I ask for war with his entire host. I only want safety here while I plan my next steps. The Queen in King's Landing, my sister, wants my head, and a certain Sel's word named Bronn might be leading hunts for me." He let a bitter note creep into his voice. "If they come for me, I hope you'll greet them with your axes." Shagga gave a raucous laugh. We enjoy splitting the skulls of those who climb our mountains." He reached out and clapped Tyrion on the shoulder, nearly toppling him. "Stay then. Eat with us. You say your father's gold is ours if we shelter you. We shall see." Tyrion bowed his head gratefully, ignoring the pain that flared in his ribs. The clans had not changed much. They were still suspicious, but open to the promise of plunder. A handshake was as good as a contract in their eyes, though only if it led to tangible gains soon. His position was fragile, but for the moment he had refuge. He sent Podrick and the others to help gather wood and haul water, hoping to show the clans he brought labor as well as empty words. That night, Tyrion shared a crude feast of goat stew and sour ale with the clan chiefs. Though the stew tasted more like boiled leather, the mere fact that he was safe from Cersei's reach lifted his spirits. He listened to Shagga's bellyaching about the Vale Knights who patrolled certain passes and Timett's talk of a vendetta with the Moon Brothers clan. In the flickering firelight, he allowed himself to dream that eventually he could restore his fortunes, bring the might of these clans back down into the lowlands. And if that day came, perhaps he would settle accounts not just with his sister and father, but with the Sel's word who had turned on him. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Bronn was summoned once more before Cersei. The queen sat at a small table in her solar, sipping mulled wine with the pleasant yet cunning Tina of Myr at her side. The windows behind them overlooked the city where a light rain shimmered on rooftops. Joffrey's high, shrill voice sounded from the other room, presumably berating a servant. Bronn steeled himself as he bowed. Cersei spoke languidly as if bored. "I have news from the west. My father writes that Robb Stark's army has been battered in several engagements. The Northmen's key allies are turning on him, some seduced by gold, others out of fear. It seems the war might soon tilt decisively in our favor." "That is good tidings, Your Grace," Bronn said, careful to sound enthusiastic. She set her cup aside, brushing a hand over her gown. "Yes. With the Tyrell alliance strong and my father triumphant, the only true threats remaining are Stannis Baratheon and the bastard of Bolton, who has begun to carve out territory for himself in the chaos. Now that the North bleeds, my father will soon crush what remains of the Wolf Boys' cause." Her green eyes flickered toward Bronn. "As for my dear brother Tyrion, we've heard not since he fled. Some suspect he's gone to the Free Cities, others that he's dead in a ditch. Have you truly no further leads?" "No, Your Grace," Bronn said evenly. "I've questioned every smuggler and black marketeer I can find. None claim to have ferried him. If he remains in Westeros, he's hiding well. If he has left, he vanished with no trace." Cersei drummed her fingers on the table, lips curling in distaste. "I would have preferred a body. Still, I suppose if he's no longer meddling in the capital, that is a small mercy." She studied Bronn for a moment. "I recall promising you a reward beyond mere gold if you helped remove him as a threat. Now that he is gone, it seems timely to grant you some token of my gratitude." Bronn felt a spark of anticipation, though he kept his face still. "Your Grace is too kind." She gestured to Tina, who rose and fetched a scroll from a side table. The queen unrolled it with languid grace. "Here we have official papers granting you the title to a modest keep in the Crownlands, Harroway Hill, a small fortress once seized by the crown after its previous occupant died without heirs. It's hardly a grand estate, but it will grant you the status of a landed knight. We'll call it a courtesy title for now, so as not to provoke too many raised eyebrows among the great lords. In time, once your loyalty is further proven, we might see you raised to a proper lordship." Bronn's heart pounded. Though he feigned stoic acceptance, inside he felt a surge of triumph. A keep of his own. Even if modest, it was land, a piece of real property. No longer would he be just a sword for hire. He bowed his head. "I am grateful, Your Grace. I'll hold Harroway Hill in the king's name, do my utmost to maintain the crown's peace." The queen handed him the scroll, her smile curved in satisfaction. "See that you do, Ser Bronn, though your knighthood is yet to be formally named, we shall style you so. The H. Isepton is not entirely comfortable knighting a Sellsword, but he'll obey in time. For now, keep your new seat in order, gather men as needed, and remain at my disposal. If Tyrion reappears or if other enemies arise, I shall call upon you." He gave a short bow. "I won't fail, Your Grace." With the deed in hand, Bronn took his leave. Outside in the corridor, he allowed himself a quick grin. He had done it. He had elevated himself from the gutters to land and a path to potential knighthood. The cost had been betraying the only lord who treated him as something more than a hireling. But such was the coin of power in Westeros. At least that was what he told himself. Perhaps he half believed it. He departed King's Landing within the fortnight, taking a small retinue of goldcloaks who had pledged themselves to him personally, along with half a dozen other hangers-on eager to curry favor with the queen's new man. They made their way north along the Rosby Road, then veered east toward the Riverlands. The land was scarred by war. Burned farms, looted villages, refugees stumbling along the muddy tracks. From the talk at inns, Bronn gathered that Tywin had inflicted a series of crushing defeats on the remnants of Robb Stark's outriders. The Freys were in negotiations for a major alliance that would see the Stark cause betrayed in exchange for a share of spoils, or so travelers whispered. The entire realm reeked of opportunism, and Bronn was just another opportunist on the road, though now with a royal writ in his saddlebag. He reached Harroway Hill, finding it a lonely, stony outcrop overshadowed by the rolling green ridges that sloped down toward the Trident. The keep was small, a cramped fortress with crumbling walls, a single tower, and a battered gatehouse. The local peasantry, suspicious, peered at Bronn and his men from behind fences. He discovered the fortress lightly garrisoned by a few old soldiers of the crown, none of them impressed by a Sellsword come to call himself master. Yet once he brandished the royal decree and threatened them with the queen's wrath. They grudgingly stood aside. Bronn strode into the courtyard with a proprietary air, ignoring the reek of unwashed dogs and the clumps of weeds in the yard. It was his now, and that thought stirred an odd sense of pride. He had never expected to own anything but a sword. He spent the next weeks bringing a semblance of order to Harroway Hill, collecting taxes from the nearby hamlets, even employing a steward who once served a minor lord to help him manage the place. The walls needed repair, and the tower leaked in heavy rain. Half the peasants muttered curses under their breath when he passed, but Bronn did not much care about popularity. He took what he needed to feed his men and tried not to ask for more. After all, he wasn't an idiot. Starving the small folk would only breed rebellion. In idle moments, he wandered the ramparts, gazing over the patchwork of farmland. He had land men who answered to him, even a battered keep. He had bested the odds, yet he found little solace. Was he truly safer now than before? War was an unpredictable beast. The queen might strip him of everything on a whim. Tywin might appear with a new decree, or Tyrion might somehow return with an army of outraged clansmen to take his vengeance. The last image made Bronn laugh grimly, but the thought niggled at him all the same. Far to the north, Tyrion had slowly regained his health. The mountain clans assigned him and his companions a crude shelter beneath an overhang of rock. Timett and Shagga visited him regularly, demanding updates on how soon his father's gold would flow into their coffers. Tyrion spun stories, promising that in time, if they allied with him, they could plunder the Vale or the Riverlands or even the Westerlands. Meanwhile, rumors trickled into the mountains. Robb Stark had been invited to a wedding at the Twins, a union meant to repair the rift with the Freys. Talk suggested Lord Walder Frey was cooperating with Tywin Lannister behind the scenes, though details were scarce. Tyrion sensed a trap. His father was cunning enough to orchestrate a betrayal in the midst of a wedding. If the young wolf was undone, it would secure Lannister supremacy across half the realm. Tyrion found himself torn. He had no great love for the Starks, but the thought of Tywin triumphing entirely left a bitter taste in his mouth. His father's victory would be an anvil dropping on Tyrion's last hopes of influence. In the evenings, he drank the harsh liquor that clansmen distilled from pine needles and goat's milk, trying to numb the constant ache in his bandaged side. Podrick, bless the boy, seldom left his side. The Watchers who'd fled King's Landing with Tyrion occasionally ventured to the foothills to gather news or procure supplies from wandering peddlers. They returned with scraps of knowledge. One day, a wiry lad brought word that King Robb Stark had indeed been slaughtered at the Twins, along with many of his bannermen, in an event already being called the Red Wedding. Walder Frey had sworn loyalty to King Joffrey, and the North was now in disarray. With that major threat removed, Tywin Lannister and the Queen had all but secured the realm. Stannis was still out there, but reeling from his defeat at Blackwater Bay. The Tyrells had grown more entrenched in King's Landing, with Joffrey set to wed Margaery Tyrell soon. Tyrion closed his eyes when he heard the news, recalling how differently the war might have gone if he had been free to coordinate the city's defenses and politics. The Red Wedding was a monstrous act, but not unexpected from his father. With the Starks and Tullis shattered, the Iron Throne was likely Tywin's in all but name. That left Tyrion's situation more precarious than ever. He had no illusions that Tywin would spare a second thought if a rumor reached him that Tyrion was holed up in the mountains. His father would dispatch a legion of men to wipe out the clans if it meant capturing the imp who had caused him so many headaches. Yet Tyrion resolved to remain patient. The clans were his only buffer, savage as they were. Perhaps a moment would come, some shift in alliances that would allow him to strike back. If Daenerys Targaryen truly brought dragons to Westeros, the realm might be thrown into fresh chaos. Or if Stannis conjured more power with that Red Witch of his. Tyrion would watch, wait, and then make his move. Weeks slipped into months. The snows began to gather at the higher passes of the Mountains of the Moon, sealing them off from easy travel. Tyrion spent his time playing counselor to the chieftains, settling disputes for them in exchange for their continued hospitality. He offered small bits of wisdom, how to gather supplies more efficiently, how to set up scouting parties. Shagga and Gunthor appreciated the knowledge. Timett remained aloof, but he too saw that Tyrion's advice sometimes proved useful in the minor skirmishes with Vale scouts. The dwarf found a sense of grim amusement in the role reversal, once hand of the king, now forced to be the hand of the clans. One chilly morning, word arrived that a party of Vale Knights was seen camped in a nearby valley, presumably hunting for mountain outlaws. The clan stirred with excitement, eager to kill knights for their steel. Tyrion, however, recognized a potential danger. If these knights uncovered Tyrion's presence, they might fetch a hefty bounty from House Arryn or the crown. He tried to dissuade the clans from a frontal attack, suggesting that stealth and ambush might yield better results. Shagga laughed, hefting a massive two-handed axe. "We are stone crows, imp. We do not fear knights. We attack at dawn and we take their heads." He turned, bellowing orders in the guttural tongue many of his men spoke. Timett merely said, "Any steel we gather is ours, Lion Man. Do not think to keep it for yourself." Tyrion grimaced, but recognized they would not be denied. They were proud warriors, uninterested in the fine points of strategy. He had no desire to join this fight, but if the knights captured him. He scowled, realizing his survival might require him to stand with the clans again. At least he could ensure that if they did attack, they did it with some cunning. At first light, the stone crows, burned men, and a handful of painted dogs advanced through the crags. Tyrion followed at a distance, flanked by Podrick and the Watchers from King's Landing. They found the Vale party in a small hollow near a rivulet, their horses tethered among sparse trees. Perhaps 24 knights and men-at-arms, well armed with bright steel and plate. No doubt they had foraged here, believing themselves safe from any large force of bandits. The clans, numbering nearly 100, spread out among the rocks, waiting for Shagga's signal. When the attack came, it was swift and brutal. The clans leaped from cover, raining stones and arrows. A handful of knights scrambled to form a shield wall, but the chaos was too sudden. The stone crows rushed in with fearsome war cries, axes swinging. Tyrion, from the rear, watched the clash, steel ringing against crude blades. A knight with a mailed fist smashed one clansman to the ground, only to be tackled by 2 more. Horses spooked, whinnying, tangling their reins. One man-at-arms tried to flee uphill, only to be felled by a burned man's arrow. Amid the tumult, Tyrion glimpsed a knight in a sky-blue cloak, the crescent moon sigil of House Arryn upon his shield. He fought valiantly, cutting down 2 clansmen. Then Shagga barreled into him, roaring about goats and stolen axes. The knight parried, but the savage onslaught overwhelmed him, and he went down with a scream as Shagga's axe bit into his helm. The clang resonated across the hollow. Blood spattered the ground, steam rising in the chill air. It was not a battle so much as a slaughter. The Valemen had no chance once surrounded. Within a quarter hour, the last of them lay dead or dying. The clans hooped in triumph, stripping the bodies of armor, rummaging through saddlebags for anything of value. Tyrion turned away from the scene of carnage, swallowing his revulsion. He had witnessed war before, he knew its cruelties, but the savage glee of the clans was never pleasant to behold. Podrick looked pale, but stood firm. When Shagga came striding up, axe still dripping, Tyrion forced himself to maintain composure. "Well, that's that," he said curtly. "But these men will be missed, won't they? The Vale Lords might send more knights to investigate." Shagga wiped blood from his cheek. "Then we shall kill them too." Tyrion opened his mouth, about to caution that a larger force might prove far more dangerous than a scouting party. But then he realized that Shagga might not care if the entire Vale came marching up these mountains. He found himself thinking, at least, if the Vale tried, that might distract them from hunting for him. And so, ironically, the clan's savage nature was also his shield. As the clansmen finished looting, Tyrion wandered among the fallen knights, scanning their features. He paused beside one wounded man who still clung to life, breath rattling in his throat. His breastplate bore a falcon in flight, the sigil of a lesser branch of House Arryn. He was barely more than a youth, wide-eyed, blood seeping from a gash in his side. When Tyrion loomed above him, the youth stared with desperate, pleading eyes. "Mercy, please," the boy croaked. "I am Ronald Stone, a squire to Ser Edward." Shagga had begun to approach, a red haze in his eyes, and Tyrion instinctively raised a hand. "Hold, Shagga." He knelt by the boy. "If you swear never to reveal you saw me here, I might at least see your passing is gentle." He did not know why he even bothered. Perhaps he did not want the last face the boy saw to be Shagga's. The squire nodded frantically, tears in his eyes, though he could barely speak. Tyrion suspected the boy would never survive that gash anyway, but he signaled Podrick. The boy rummaged for a spare water skin, dribbling some into Ronald's mouth. The squire coughed weakly, eyes fluttering. Then Shagga loomed behind Tyrion, scowling. "Leave him, lion. He is nearly dead. Let him feed the crows," Shagga growled. Tyrion set his jaw. "As you wish," but he turned back to the squire, murmuring, "The gods be kind." He rose and walked away, his heart heavy. The clans had no use for captives, and Tyrion had no power here to grant mercy. All he could do was remove himself from the savagery as quickly as possible. That evening, back in camp, the clans sang songs of their victory. Tyrion tried to drown the memory of the dying squire with more of their vile liquor. Pod sat close by, as if fearful that Tyrion might do something rash. At length, Timett joined them, a stoic presence with his eye patch. Timett regarded Tyrion with a measured silence, then said, "You do not enjoy the kill?" Tyrion looked at him over the rim of a crudely carved cup. "I've seen too much of it to enjoy it now. Perhaps I never did. War is war, but butchery is another matter." Timett nodded, as if that answered something. After a moment, he added, "We have fought for you now, imp. Perhaps you will find a way to bring us bigger battles, more plunder." Tyrion stifled a bitter laugh. "Yes, I'm sure more plunder can be arranged. The entire realm is tearing itself apart. Pick your side, you'll find plenty of heads to cleave." Timett's lips twisted in a faint smile. "I prefer to pick the winning side." Tyrion recognized the echo of Bronn's sentiments in those words and felt an old fury burn in his chest. "Then best be patient," he said shortly. "For the moment, the Lannisters appear to be winning, but we both know that can change." Or so he prayed. If the Lannisters' victory was absolute, Tyrion would never again have a safe place in Westeros. Weeks turned into months as the first snows began dusting the mountain peaks. Occasional parties of Vale Knights still probed the passes, but none made it as far as the main clan encampments. Tyrion found an odd sense of routine. Every few days, a messenger from the foothills brought news of the wider war. The Ironborn had retreated from some of their conquests in the north, now that the Lannisters were poised to send men to quell them. The Boltons claimed the north in the name of King Joffrey, though the northern lords resisted. Rumors abounded about wildlings crossing the wall, about the Night's Watch pleading for help. King's Landing was abuzz with festivities. King Joffrey's wedding to Margaery Tyrell was to be the grandest affair in memory. Tyrion snorted at that. He recalled how his sister relished empty pageantry to mask the city's hunger. Cersei's hold on power strengthened daily, yet underlying tensions remained. The smallfolk still despised her. Tywin's brutal methods in the Riverlands had alienated some lords. Even the Tyrells, now joined to the crown by marriage, had ambitions of their own. Tyrion's informants whispered that Margaery charmed the crowds in a way Cersei never could, a reality that might sow seeds of jealousy. None of that helped Tyrion directly, but it gave him a strange satisfaction to imagine the Queen's frustrations. On a bitterly cold night, as wind howled outside the crude shelter, Tyrion huddled by a fire with Podrick and the Watchers. One Watcher, a grizzled fellow named Galt, shared a rumor gleaned from a peddler. Apparently, a large wedding had taken place in King's Landing. King Joffrey had wed the Tyrell maiden amid great splendor, but the feast ended in horror. Joffrey had collapsed, choking on his own blood, and died before the court's eyes. They said it was poison. Margaery was widowed within an hour of her wedding. Panic had seized the hall, and the Queen Dowager, Cersei, had accused Tyrion of the murder despite the fact that he was nowhere to be found. She had demanded that all lords loyal to the throne hunt him down, dead or alive. Tyrion listened in shock, hardly able to breathe. Joffrey was dead, and unbelievably, he, Tyrion, had been blamed. It was madness, yet typical of Cersei to cast blame on him for an atrocity. Tyrion felt no sorrow for Joffrey, the boy had been a monster. But the knowledge that his sister would paint him as a kinslayer, a regicide, and brand him the worst traitor in the realm sent a chill through him. He pressed for details. Galt only shrugged, saying the rumor was that Sansa Stark was also implicated, but she vanished from the city. Some insisted Peter Baelish orchestrated the entire plot. No one seemed to know the truth. For a long while after hearing this, Tyrion sat silent before the fire, mind-whirling. So Joffrey was gone. Tommen would presumably inherit the throne. Tywin would continue as Hand and Cersei as the Queen Regent to a younger boy king. But her hatred for Tyrion would reach new heights, as would the hunts for him. Perhaps the only good to come of it was that the realm might recall his old reputation for cunning, though that hardly served him if everyone considered him a poisoner. He expected the price on his head had doubled. He did not have to wait long for the consequences. Just a fortnight later, riders approached the fringes of the Stone Crow's territory. They carried Lannister banners, accompanied by a small group of Vale men flying Lady Erin's falcon. The outriders who spotted them brought word to the clans. The Lannisters had come at last, likely with a proposition: help them root out the vile dwarf or else suffer the wrath of Tywin's armies. Shagga and Timett argued over how to respond, but they eventually agreed to meet the Lannister envoy under a parley flag. They marched to a flat plain near a frozen lake with 50 clansmen on each side and the Lannisters bringing an equal number of men-at-arms. Tyrion, disguised in a heavy cowl, accompanied them. He stood at the back, hoping not to be recognized. Over the icy wind, he heard the clank of armor as the Lannister men formed up. At their head was a pale-haired knight wearing the red and gold lion surcoat, a man Tyrion did not recognize. A slender Vale lord with the Arryn falcon upon his doublet sat on a dappled horse beside him, looking uneasy. Shagga roared from across the snow, "Who comes to Stone Crow Land? Speak, or Shagga will feed your entrails to his goats." The Lannister knight coughed. "Ser Lambert Lannister, cousin to Lord Tywin. We come at Lady Arryn's request to quell banditry in these mountains and to discuss certain matters with your clan chiefs." His tone was stiff, but not without caution. He eyed the heavily armed clansmen. "We know you harbor an outlaw, Tyrion Lannister, who stands accused of poisoning King Joffrey." Shagga spat. "We know no Tyrions. We know no kings. The Stone Crows roam where we please." Ser Lambert pressed on. "There is a bounty on the dwarf's head declared by the crown and by Lady Arryn. Deliver him to us and you shall be well compensated. There is gold in it, steel too. If you refuse and continue to raid the Vale's lands, you will face retribution from the combined forces of the Eyrie and the Westerlands. Do you truly think you can withstand that?" The threat hung in the frigid air. Shagga and Timett exchanged glances. Then Timett growled, "You speak of a dwarf we do not know. Yet you say you come with Vale men. We have killed many Vale men and will kill more. Our mountains are not so easily taken." The Vale Lord scowled. "Lady Lisa Arryn will not allow your forays to continue unchecked. Soon the passes will be ours and your tribes will starve in the high peaks when winter grows truly harsh." Tension rippled among the clansmen. Tyrion hovered at the rear, heart-pounding. If the clans sold him out, it might end their survival. If they refused, a large-scale assault could come. Did the Queen or Tywin truly care enough to send a major host up these mountains? Possibly. Tyrion tried to think of some cunning method to drive them off. Could he reveal himself, propose a bargain? The notion seemed suicidal. They wanted his head. Shagga hefted his axe onto his shoulder. "You threaten us, you threaten our goats, you speak of dwarfs. Shagga grows tired of your prattle." He began to walk forward through the snow. Ser Lambert stiffened, motioning for his men to stand ready. Timett bared his teeth. The moment bristled with the possibility of violence. Tyrion, seized by a sudden sense of doom, realized that if this escalated, the clans might kill the envoys, spurring a full-scale invasion. And it was not certain the clans would allow him to remain in their midst once the Lannisters attacked in earnest. In the face of a real threat, they might decide giving up Tyrion was simpler. He took a shaky breath and stepped sideways, edging behind a rise of rock. If fighting broke out, he could flee up the slopes with Pod. But then Ser Lambert said loudly, "If the dwarf has fled, prove it. Or present him if he's here. The reward is substantial, houses and keeps in the Vale for any tribe that cooperates." He paused. "You might even negotiate a recognized domain in these mountains. The Lady Arryn is not unreasonable." A flicker of interest passed over Shagga's face. The tribes had always wanted official dominion over the mountains. Could it be that they would buy it with Tyrion's life? Timett locked eyes with Shagga. They conferred in guttural whispers. One or two painted dogs murmured that a fortress in the Vale would be worth more than any half-remembered vow to the imp. Tyrion's stomach twisted. This was the moment. He measured distances, trying to guess if he could slip away before one side or the other noticed. But then Shagga roared a laugh that echoed across the frozen lake. "The Vale Lords are cunning, but the Stone Crows are not stupid. If we gave you a dwarf, you'd kill him and then kill us. Shagga has heard enough. We will not yield our land. Now go back to your airy castle or see how well your men fare when the snow buries your dead." The Lannister knight's face hardened. "Then you name yourself enemies of the crown. Let the record show we offered peace." Shagga pointed with his axe. "Peace for goats is a pitiful meal. Begone." Then he turned and stomped away as the clans parted to let him pass. Timett and the painted dogs glared at the Vale men, eager for a fight, but they too followed Shagga's lead. Ser Lambert's face was rigid with frustration. At length he barked, "Withdraw." The Lannisters and Vale men backed off, well aware that tangling with 100 savage warriors on a frozen lake was not wise. They mounted and rode away in formation, carrying their unfulfilled threat back to Lady Arryn and Tywin Lannister. Within the hour, the clan party returned to camp. Shagga summoned Tyrion to a council fire. Shagga was in high spirits, proud of his defiance. But Timett looked troubled. The painted dogs grumbled about the risk of bringing a greater host down on them. When Tyrion arrived, they regarded him with conflicting expressions, some suspicious, some eager to hear his counsel. Shagga boomed. "The Vale Lords and these pink lions do not frighten Shagga. If they come, we will fill the ravines with their bones. But Timett says your father might come in larger numbers, using cunning or siege weapons. Timett wants to know what the imp thinks." Tyrion cleared his throat, feeling the pressure of the moment. "We can hold off small forces easily enough, but if they send thousands with knights and supplies, we might be overwhelmed eventually. The mountains help us, but the enemy has near limitless resources. They might blockade the passes, starve you out. If the Vale Lords bring in caravans of food for their men, they can outlast us." Shagga waved that away. "We have goats in hidden valleys. We can eat them for months." Tyrion bit back a retort, knowing that illusions of invincibility could doom them all. He tried a different tack. "We must sow confusion among our foes, keep them from sending all their strength here. The realm is still rife with war, even after the Red Wedding. Perhaps if we strike deals with other armies or create distractions, the Vale won't risk a major campaign in the mountains. If Stannis or the Ironborn attack the Crown's forces elsewhere, Tywin can't spare enough men to scour these peaks." Timett said, "Who would we ally with? We have no contact with these southern armies." Tyrion considered. "I might have a way. The Queen claims I poisoned Joffrey, and that means Stannis or others who hate the Lannisters might see me as a potential ally. If I can make contact with a loyal messenger of Stannis, or with some other rebellious faction, we could coordinate a diversion. Force Tywin and the Vale to turn their attention to bigger threats." Shagga grunted. "We do not want southern kings, but we will kill them if needed." Tyrion rolled his eyes. "I propose we let them kill each other, or at least occupy each other, while leaving us alone up here. Meanwhile, I can continue fulfilling my promise to reward you with gold, if we can extort it from the Crown or the Vale or another enemy." It was an audacious plan, but the clans had no simpler solution. They either had to brace for an eventual invasion or try to manipulate the realm's warring factions so that no single force had the resources to challenge them. Shagga and Timett relented, telling Tyrion to do whatever he could. So, in the weeks that followed, Tyrion sent a pair of Watchers south to infiltrate the chaos of the Riverlands. They carried letters encoded with references that only a keen political mind might decipher, intended to reach any of Stannis' agents or even men of House Martell who might desire vengeance on Tywin for the old crimes against Elia Martell. Tyrion's plan was to promise alliance or at least mutual sabotage of Lannister forces in exchange for leaving the mountains alone. All the while, winter deepened. The passes froze, but some clan warriors still roved the lower slopes, ambushing scouts. Tyrion endured the harsh conditions as best he could, nursing his hatred for those who had destroyed his life: Cersei, Tywin, and yes, Bronn. That name, more than once, intruded on his thoughts, bringing a sharp pang of bitterness. He had grown foolishly fond of the Sellsword's irreverent humor. A part of him wondered if Bronn truly was content with his reward, if he had truly meant to kill Tyrion on the Blackwater, or if it was all a trick of some deeper plot. But Tyrion was not naive. Gold had done it, simple as that. In the Riverlands, Bronn's new domain at Harroway Hill sat at the edge of growing storms. Although the Red Wedding ended Stark resistance in the area, roving bands of outlaws and disgruntled Stark sympathizers still lurked in the forests. One day, riders in Frey colors passed by the keep, demanding supplies. Bronn granted them a token portion, grumbling that every passing band of so-called loyalists thought they could tax him. Another time, a lesser Lannister cousin arrived to remind Bronn that he owed fealty to Lord Tywin and must be ready to raise men if called. Bronn nodded and poured him wine, but gave no firm assurances. Harroway Hill was not large enough to field more than a handful of soldiers. He repaired the walls, eyed the horizon, and tried to ignore a persistent sense of unease. That unease thickened when the Queen's messenger arrived with a sealed letter demanding that Bronn prepare to host a small retinue of Arryn men. Apparently, the Queen was forging an alliance with Lady Lisa Arryn, or so the letter implied, to help quell the mountain bandits. The men would travel through Harroway Hill, using it as a staging point before crossing the Vale's borders. That suggested the crown was indeed planning some manner of campaign in the mountains. Bronn read the letter by torchlight, brow furrowed. If they were going after the clans, would Tyrion be caught in the sweep? He found himself uneasy at the thought. Tyrion's fate should be of no concern, not after the betrayal. But still. When the errant contingent arrived, led by an austere knight named Ser Benedar Belmore, Bronn played the courteous host, offering them the keep's main hall. Ser Benedar, unimpressed by the rundown fortress, sniffed at the accommodations. Over dinner, the knight explained, "We ride east on the morrow to meet a Lannister force near Maidenpool. From there, we'll push into the Mountains of the Moon and eradicate the clans who have plagued the Vale for years. Lady Arryn is convinced that if we catch Tyrion Lannister among them, King Tommen's court will reward us handsomely." Bronn sipped his ale. Seems straightforward enough. The clans are savage brutes, but they know the terrain well. Ser Benedar frowned. They cannot stand against hundreds of knights. Their savagery will be no match for the combined might of the Eyrie and Casterly Rock. Maybe, Bronn said, affecting a casual shrug. They'll vanish into the heights. You'll be picking them off a few at a time. The Vale Knight glowered. Perhaps. But there is nowhere to hide from a determined pursuit. These clans are unorganized, squabbling, reliant on pillage. We'll strangle them. Bronn forced a thin smile, though the words unsettled him. Would they truly find Tyrion cowering in some cave? A mental image flashed of the dwarf in that battered armor on the Blackwater, face streaked with blood. Odd that it still felt like a pit had opened in Bronn's stomach. "Well, if you succeed, the realm will be better for it," he said, draining his cup. After the meal, as the Vale men sprawled in the hall's corners to sleep off their wine, Bronn paced in the courtyard. He gazed at the moonlit fields, the silhouettes of battered towers. Part of him thought, this is good. The queen roots out the last threat. Tyrion will be seized or killed. The matter closes, and Bronn can live in relative security. But another part, more restless, remembered how Tyrion had once promised him a place at his side no matter what came, that genuine glint of camaraderie in his mismatched eyes. If the dwarf died out there, would Bronn be rid of guilt? Or would he feel the sting forever? He exhaled, frosty breath drifting in the night air. No sense dwelling on it. The war would do what the war did. Come morning, the Vale men left, and Bronn was free to tend his keep. Yet the knowledge they were riding to purge the mountains weighed on him. He found himself snapping at his men for small slights, losing sleep. Late one night, he returned to the locked chest in his solar where he kept the remainder of the queen's gold. He fingered a large, lion-stamped coin, shining in the candlelight. Was it worth all this? A week later, a ragged outrider galloped into Harroway Hill's yard, wounded and desperate. He spoke of an ambush near the foothills. Apparently, the Vale Knights had encountered a large clan force. The fighting was brutal. A few survivors fled, scattering. Ser Benedar Belmore might be dead. The outrider was half delirious, but he insisted the clans had someone leading them, some cunning figure who set traps, directed feints. A rumor said it was the imp himself orchestrating the fight from the shadows. Bronn felt his pulse quicken, forcing himself to maintain a blank expression as the man raved. That evening, while the outrider was tended by Bronn's steward, Bronn slipped away to the ramparts. He stared east, where the mountains stood dark and silent. A memory came unbidden. Tyrion, half smiling over a map, explaining how cunning could win battles that brute force could not. Was it truly Tyrion coordinating the clans, if so many Vale Knights had been cut down? War-stoked rumors beyond truth, but if the imp indeed organized the clans, they might well cause havoc. That havoc could enrage Tywin or the queen. Sooner or later, a larger Lannister host might be unleashed. Bronn pictured columns of troops, scorpions, rams. Enough men could scour those passes thoroughly, forcing the clans to scatter. Yet Tyrion would likely slip away unless cornered. Perhaps that was for the best. Or perhaps it was an opportunity. The next day, Bronn spent hours in indecision. Then, in a move that surprised even himself, he ordered his horse saddled, gathered a small escort of half a dozen loyal men, and set out for the foothills. He told his steward that he meant to hunt outlaws, ensuring Harroway Hill's safety from bandits. He did not mention Tyrion. He only knew that something pulled him east, a nagging sense that he should see for himself what was happening. If the clans were truly winning, he might glean whether the realm would soon respond with an even bigger force. If Tyrion was truly among them, perhaps Bronn could. Do what? Apologize? Finish the job? He could not say. Their journey took them over muddy roads scoured by winter rains across half-frozen fords where the horses slipped. Villagers told of Vale Knights passing recently, all bloodied, chasing some elusive force in the hills. Bronn pressed on, heading into rougher terrain. He soon found signs of skirmishes, broken lances, churned up snow-stained pink, crows pecking at unburied corpses in the gullies. At one point, they passed the twisted remains of a small catapult, half-burned, no doubt left behind by a retreating force. The mountain clans were fighting back viciously. On the third day, Bronn's group climbed a steep track and entered a narrow defile. Snow flurried around them and the wind made the horses skittish. A hush lay over the gorge as if watchers lurked behind every boulder. Bronn's men exchanged uneasy glances. One hissed, "I don't like this place. Feels like a grave." Bronn silenced him with a gesture. He scanned the heights. No sign of movement, but that meant little. He wondered if perhaps they had wandered into a trap. But he pressed on. If the clans were near, they would show themselves soon enough. Or they would kill them. They turned a bend and came upon fresh carnage. Half a dozen Vale men, stripped of armor, sprawled in the snow near a shattered cart. A horse's corpse lay in a stiff heap. The wind gusted, sending powder swirling. Bronn's men muttered curses, dismounting carefully to examine the bodies. A few arrows protruded from the men's chests, arrowheads of black flint rather than steel. The clan's handiwork indeed. Bronn crouched by one body, noting the fine crest on the man's helm. Another highborn knight, undone by the savage clans. A sense of inevitability gnawed at him. Suddenly, a whistle echoed high above. Bronn shot upright, hand on his sword. His men scrambled for cover, shouting. Shapes appeared on the ridge, a handful at first, then more, perched amid the rocky crags. Bronn glimpsed thick furs, battered armor, those black flint arrowheads glinting in the wan winter sun. The painted dogs, perhaps, or the stone crows. He raised a hand in what he hoped looked like a gesture of peace, though he doubted they would recognize or care. An arrow zipped overhead, lodging in a nearby rock. Bronn cursed under his breath. "Hold," he bellowed. "We're not Vale men. We've no quarrel with you." Another arrow flew, landing at his horse's feet. The beast reared, nearly unseating him. "Seven hells," he hissed, trying to maintain control. A stony silence answered, except for the wind. Then a voice carried down, "Drop your steel. Come forward if you dare." Bronn could not see who spoke. The accent was rough, but the common tongue was clear enough. He hesitated. He had no illusions about the clan's hospitality. But better to try to parley than die in a rain of arrows. "Men," he said quietly, "drop your weapons." One or two looked at him as if he were mad. "Do it," Bronn snarled. "They have the high ground. We'll be pincushions otherwise." Grudgingly, they obeyed, letting swords and spears thud onto the snow. Bronn dismounted, raising empty hands. "We come peacefully," he called. "We only want to speak with whoever leads you." In his heart, he prayed it might be Tyrion pulling the strings, though he was not sure if that was better or worse. Another whistle. Shadows moved. Then a small knot of clansmen began to descend a narrow path, weapons ready. Bronn braced himself. If it came to a fight, he and his men were doomed. But maybe, just maybe, the presence of Tyrion in their camp would buy him a chance to talk. The clansmen approached, fur-painted dogs, face paint marking their cheeks with swirling designs, and two stone crows behind them. Their leader was a lanky warrior with a necklace of teeth. He sized Bronn up, suspicious. "You're no knight of the Vale," he growled. "What do you want here?" Bronn forced a neutral expression. "We were seeking knowledge of the fighting. I hold a keep west of here, sworn to the crown, but I didn't come to make war on you." The man sneered. "A keep? And who in the mountains cares for your keep?" His companions laughed, brandishing axes. One painted dog spat in the snow at Bronn's feet. Another eyed the piles of weapons Bronn's men had discarded, obviously tempted. Bronn resisted the urge to recoil, trying to keep his voice calm. "I came in hopes of parleying with your chieftains. I've heard rumors that Tyrion Lannister, the imp, might be among you. I served him once, and I have words for him." The clan warriors exchanged looks, murmuring. Then one stone crow barked, "We do not say who stays with us. The mountains are ours. If you want to speak, come with us. Or die here. Choose quickly." Bronn's men shifted nervously, aware that they were at these clansmen's mercy. Bronn exhaled a steamy breath, then nodded. "We'll come, but let my men gather their arms. We can't walk unarmed into your camp." Painted Dog snorted. "You can and you will, or the crows feast on your eyes." His flint-tipped arrow hovered near Bronn's chest. Bronn grimaced. He had no choice. "Fine, we'll leave the steel." His men shot him panicked glances, but he hissed for them to comply. Better to be marched as captives than slaughtered. The watchers glowered but obeyed, stepping away from their weapons. The clan warriors herded them up the rocky path. The slope was treacherous, and the wind cut like a knife. Bronn kept alert, scanning the ridges. He noted more archers skulking above. This was a well-organized group, not a random band of outlaws. More signs that Tyrion's cunning might be guiding them. One painted dog gave Bronn a rough shove when he lagged. He bit back a curse, letting them take the lead. They pressed on for hours, ascending ridges thick with pines and scrub. The air grew thinner, the cold fiercer. Sunset approached when they emerged onto a plateau dotted with tents of hide and battered war banners that flapped in the biting wind. Smoke curled from several fires. Dozens of clan warriors milled about, sharpening weapons or roasting chunks of meat. A large bonfire dominated the center, and beyond it, a squat rock formation that half resembled a crumbled tower. One of the painted dogs stalked over to a figure kneeling by the bonfire, said something in a low voice. The figure turned. Bronn's heart nearly stopped. There was Tyrion Lannister, hair unkempt, face thinner than before, but unmistakable. He wore a patched cloak of fur, and the left side of his face bore the faint scar from the Blackwater. His eyes widened at the sight of Bronn. Then shock gave way to something unreadable. A swirl of emotions that might have been anger, disbelief, or ironically, amusement. He rose stiffly, wincing slightly, and limped closer. Podrick P. Ain hovered behind him, gaping at Bronn with equal astonishment. The painted dog who had escorted them gestured. "They say they know you, Im. They came from the west, said your name." Tyrion nodded slowly, gaze locked on Bronn. "Indeed," he said softly. "We are acquainted." He studied Bronn's men who stood there shivering, unarmed, at the mercy of the clans. Then his eyes flicked back to Bronn. "You've come a long way for a conversation." Bronn's mouth felt dry. He swallowed. "I heard a rumor you were up here, leading these clans. Wanted to see for myself." Podrick stared uncertainly. Tyrion tilted his head. "And so you have. What next? Plan to bring me back to King's Landing in chains? The Queen would reward you handsomely." Bronn hesitated, uncertain how to respond in front of so many listening ears. "That's not why I'm here," he managed. A short, mirthless laugh escaped Tyrion. "Isn't it? The last time I saw you, you were about to put a sword through my neck on the Blackwater, if not for the chaos of the battle. You got your keep for that, I hear. Harroway Hill, wasn't it?" Bronn gave a stiff nod. "Aye. The Queen gave me land and a promise of knighthood." Tyrion studied him in silence. Then he flicked his gaze to the painted dogs. "I'll speak with him alone." The clansman bristled, suspicious, but Tyrion raised a hand. "He won't kill me here, not unless he wants all your arrows in his back. Let me see what he wants." He motioned toward a side path that led behind a rocky outcropping. "Come on, Bronn." Bronn followed him, the eyes of the clans pinned to his back. His men remained under guard near the fire, looking none too pleased, but they were alive for the moment. Podrick trailed at Tyrion's side like a wary shadow. Behind the outcropping, the wind was less fierce, the ground dusted with snow. Tyrion turned, folding his arms, expression cold. "Well?" Tyrion demanded quietly. "I'm waiting." Bronn realized he had no simple answer. He let out a breath. "I didn't come to kill you, if that's what you fear. I heard you might be alive up here, that you ambushed some Vale Knights. Curious to see if it was true." Tyrion regarded him sourly. "And now you have your answer. Will you fetch the reward from the Queen for dragging me back? Or have you found your keep lacking, so you want another payment?" The word stung more than Bronn anticipated. "I don't need more gold," he said. "I just needed to see for myself if you were truly behind these raids." Tyrion gave a bitter snort. "And so I am. The clans follow me because I show them how to fight knights more effectively. I have nowhere else to go, thanks to you and your new mistress. My father hunts me, my sister calls me a poisoner, the Vale wants my head. And so here I am." Bronn grimaced. "Your sister pinned the king's murder on you. Is it truly not your doing?" Tyrion's eyes flashed. "I did not kill Joffrey, though I suspect many are grateful to whomever did. But no, that was not my hand." He paused, then gave a mocking half-bow. "But none of that matters, does it? The official story is that I am the vile kinslayer who ended the king's life." Podrick cleared his throat. "My lord," he murmured. Tyrion gave a curt nod, acknowledging the boy but keeping his gaze on Bronn. Bronn shuffled his feet, the wind tugging at his cloak. "So what now? You've got these clans riled up, you're killing Vale Knights. Tywin and Lisa Arryn will not let that stand. They'll come in greater numbers." Tyrion smirked. "Let them come. The mountains are vast, the pass is narrow. We'll whittle them down, sabotage their supply lines, perhaps cause enough trouble that they back off and turn their attention to other matters. I'm not trying to conquer Westeros from up here, just survive. And maybe bleed the Lannisters a little for what they've done to me." Bronn managed a humorless chuckle. "You might get yourself killed in the process, but I suppose it's your choice." Tyrion's lips tightened. "Yes, everything is my choice, as it always was. Betrayed by my cell's word, slandered by my sister, condemned by half the realm. Truly, I am free to do as I please, so long as it's in a place no sensible man would want." They stood in tense silence. The memory of the Blackwater hung between them like a malignant spirit. Finally, Bronn sighed. "I did what I did for coin, for a keep. You know me. I'm no lord, never was. I saw a chance to better myself." Tyrion's eyes were cool. "You succeeded." Bronn gave a curt nod. "Yes, and now I find I'm not so sure it was worth it." Tyrion's gaze flickered. A myriad of emotions crossed his face. Anger, bitterness, perhaps a flicker of sympathy. "Regrets, Bronn?" He shrugged, feeling the weight of the moment. "A few." Tyrion tilted his head back, exhaling. "What do you want from me now? Forgiveness? Partnership? Or to kill me so you can sleep at night without wondering if I'll come for you?" Bronn blew out a breath. "If I'd wanted you dead, I could have shot you from the ridge. I came alone to speak. As for what I want, I truly don't know." Podrick glanced between them, uncertain. The wind stirred the pines overhead, carrying the distant laughter of clansmen around the bonfire. Tyrion spoke, voice quieter. "Your presence here puts me in danger as well as you. The clans might well decide to slit your throat, or you might be followed by Lannister scouts. If so, we'll both be overrun." He studied Bronn's face. "If you have any decency left, you'll leave. Return to your keep. Or, if you truly wish to atone, you could feed me information about Tywin's next moves. Help me hold these mountains." Bronn grimaced. "You're asking me to betray the crown again." A cynical smile tugged at Tyrion's lips. "Look where loyalty got me. Look where it got you. Perhaps betrayal is your natural calling, as it is the calling of so many in this realm." Bronn forced a short laugh. "Seven hells, you're not wrong." He raked a hand through his dark hair, feeling the creeping tide of conflicting loyalties. "If I gave you such information, the Queen would see me hanged if she found out." "Yes," Tyrion said. "She might. Then again, maybe not. You've survived so far by playing both sides." Podrick added hesitantly, "We could use any help you can offer, even if it's just details of how many men they might send." Bronn realized how young Pod truly was. He seemed weary, battered, yet still fiercely devoted to Tyrion. It struck Bronn that he had tossed aside a loyalty that had begun to form naturally, replaced by something cheaper. The regrets churned in his gut. "If I do this," he said slowly, "it might cost me my keep, my rank. Everything I gained." Tyrion's eyes held neither pity nor condemnation. "It might. I cannot deny that. So perhaps you should go. Live your life, watch your back for assassins, and hope the war ends with you still on the right side." Bronn gave a rough exhale. "7 bloody hells." He glanced away, eyes tracing the rocky slope. "I have men with me. If we vanish too long, rumors might swirl. But I can glean what I can from travelers, from the Queen's envoys. Maybe slip some tidbits your way, quiet-like." The faintest ghost of a smile touched Tyrion's mouth. "You do that. Don't expect me to be a damn hero," Bronn muttered. "But if I learn of a major force assembling for the mountains, I'll find a way to pass word. That's the best I can promise." Tyrion studied him in silence for a long moment, as if weighing his sincerity. Then he said softly, "I never expected an apology from you, Bronn. But if you truly do this, it might ease well, let's just say I'll remember it." Bronn gave a stiff nod. "Fine." He looked Tyrion in the eye. "I'll remember it too." A hush lingered between them. Then Tyrion motioned for Podrick. "Go tell the clans to let Bronn and his men leave. Unharmed, with their arms returned, minus anything they might try to use on us. I'll see them off personally." Pod hurried away. Tyrion lingered, shifting his weight. "So, your keep, is it as grand as you hoped?" Bronn let out a small, humorless chuckle. "It's a pile of stone with a leaky tower overshadowed by taxes and responsibility. It's more than I ever had, but I can't say it's the dream I pictured." Tyrion smiled crookedly. "Welcome to lordship. My father used to say that any land can be shaped into a fortune if managed well, but it's more likely to shape you into a tired old man. They stood in awkward silence until Podrick returned with a painted dog warrior who barked an order to gather Bronn's men. Weapons were returned, though the clansmen kept a wary watch. Tyrion walked at Bronn's side toward the mouth of the camp, ignoring the suspicious glances from Shagga and Timett. Once they were out of earshot, Tyrion murmured, "Don't breathe a word of this arrangement to anyone else, or you'll ruin us both." Bronn nodded. "I'm not a fool. I'll do what I can quietly." They paused near a half-collapsed boulder. Bronn's men hovered, relieved to see him safe. He waved them to wait a moment longer, then faced Tyrion again. "One last question. If the day ever comes when you ride down from these mountains with a force at your back, will you come for me?" Tyrion's eyes gleamed. "You mean, will I take vengeance?" "Hard to say." After a heartbeat, he added, "If we both live that long, we'll talk again, perhaps on more equal footing." Bronn managed a faint smile. "Fair enough." With that, the dwarf turned away, cloak whipping in the wind. Podrick trailed him, glancing back at Bronn with an uncertain expression. Then they vanished amid the swirling snow, returning to the heart of the clan encampment. Bronn exhaled slowly, feeling a strange weight lift from his chest, replaced by a new heaviness. He rejoined his men, who gazed at him with questions in their eyes, but he offered no explanation. They were simply grateful to be alive. The clansmen escorted them to the gorge's entrance under watchful bows. Then, with a curt gesture, they allowed Bronn's group to descend back the way they had come, retrieving their mounts from the area where they had dropped the Vale men's corpses. The day was drawing to a close, the sky bruised purple and red. As they rode away, Bronn felt more uncertain than ever, yet also oddly resolved. He would keep his ear to the ground for any major offensive aimed at the mountains. That, at least, he could do. Whether it was out of guilt, loyalty, or a strange sense of pity for the dwarf, he could not have said. They returned to Harroway Hill in sullen silence. Over the next weeks, Bronn resumed his routine, drilling his meager garrison, collecting taxes, and exchanging letters with the crown's agents whenever they passed. Ser Lambert Lannister led another expedition east, but it too ended in bloody ambush. Grumbling about the savage clans grew louder among the local lords. Bronn listened carefully, gleaning that Tywin was embroiled in the aftermath of the Purple Wedding, the new betrothal of Tommen to Margaery, and uneasy alliances with the Martells of Dorne. For the moment, a major push into the Vale's mountains was low on the list of priorities, so the smaller forces that tried their luck continued to be chewed up. Bronn quietly sent one of his men, disguised as a peddler, east to a certain contact near the foothills, who would pass word to Tyrion that no large host was coming yet. Thus, a precarious balance emerged. Tyrion and the clans could bleed the Vale men who ventured too close, but not enough to spark a full-scale invasion. Tywin's gaze was focused on more pressing matters, forging a new power dynamic in King's Landing after Joffrey's death, containing Stannis, and ensuring House Martell did not become an enemy. Meanwhile, winter's icy grip tightened on the land. The roads turned treacherous. Armies typically went to ground in such conditions. Cersei remained queen regent to the boy King Tommen, but it was Tywin who held the reins of power. Whispers reached Bronn that the queen grew restless, haunted by the specter of Tyrion. She demanded daily updates, but none satisfied her. She wrote more letters seeking the Vale's cooperation to scour the mountains thoroughly. But Lady Lisa Arryn was famously protective of her domain, uncertain if she wanted large Lannister hosts stomping about near the Eyrie. The result was a half-measured, ongoing conflict that accomplished little except to harden the clans against outsiders. Tyrion thrived in that environment, guiding them to small but steady victories. In time, Bronn's man returned with a secret token from the clan messenger. It was a simple carved stone lion with one ear broken, Tyrion's crude way of sending thanks for the tip about how no major offensive was planned. Bronn turned it over in his hand, feeling a surge of conflicting emotion. He tucked it away, out of sight, uncertain why he bothered keeping it. So the war ground on, the realm fracturing beneath a veneer of Lannister Tyrell control. And in the mountains, the exiled dwarf, once Hand of the King, carved out a new brand of power among savage allies. None could say how it would end or who would eventually stand victorious, But in every tavern where soldiers gathered, in every corner of the 7 kingdoms, men spoke of the mountains near the Vale where Tyrion Lannister the Poisoner hid among wild clans. Some believed it was only a matter of time before Tywin crushed him. Others insisted the dwarf possessed cunning beyond measure, that he might outlast them all. Bronn, Lord of Harroway Hill, by the grace of his own treachery, found himself straddling 2 worlds, 1 foot in the shaky service of the crown, 1 foot in a secret alliance with a fugitive imp. He told himself he was only hedging his bets the way any Sel's word would. Yet in his quieter moments, he admitted a small part of him hoped Tyrion would survive long enough to see them meet again, perhaps on friendlier terms. Strange that a single betrayal could spiral into so many far-reaching consequences. The War of the 5 Kings had opened the door for men like Bronn to grasp at power, but it had also opened the door for regrets that might never fully close. In King's Landing, Cersei raged behind closed doors, Tywin plotted, Marjorie charmed the court, and the Game of Thrones continued its deadly dance. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen gathered armies, her dragons growing by the day, poised to someday claim the Iron Throne. In the north, the Boltons reigned over a sullen populace, while the surviving Starks were scattered or presumed dead. All across Westeros, alliances shifted like quicksand. And high in the cold, windswept peaks, Tyrion Lannister played a dangerous hand, aided by the savage loyalty of clans who cared little for southern politics, except insofar as they might gain steel and gold. Had Bronn not betrayed Tyrion at the Blackwater, perhaps House Lannister would have been united, Joffrey might have been spared or replaced sooner, and the war might have ended more swiftly. Instead, the sabotage and subsequent fallout had undermined Tyrion's place in the city, leading to the chain of events that stranded him in the mountains, stoking a more prolonged conflict with the Vale and the Crown. Now, with the Purple Wedding fiasco behind them and Tommen on the throne, the realm was calmer at the surface but riddled with unresolved fissures. Winter's chill settled in earnest. At Harroway Hill, Bronn stood on his ramparts one morning, blowing into his hands for warmth. He gazed over the frosty countryside. His men, loyal more to gold than to him personally, patrolled the courtyard. Somewhere out in those mountains to the east was Tyrion, embittered, determined, a man who refused to let betrayal or banishment end his story. Bronn wondered if it would all come crashing down when the snows thawed, when Tywin made another move. For now, the world seemed to hold its breath. He took a slow breath, then turned from the battlements, heading down into the keep. There was work to be done, collecting taxes, sorting out a dispute between 2 local farmers. Lord's work, ironically enough. He had everything he claimed he wanted. But in the back of his mind, the image of Tyrion lingered, standing among the clans, forging a life from scraps. He pictured the dwarf's scarred face twisted with wry humor. Perhaps they would never see each other again, and perhaps that was best. But something told Bronn that the war was not finished with them. One day, the winds of fate might blow them together once more, for either reconciliation or bloodshed. And so the story continued, shaped by a single betrayal on the Blackwater that changed the course of battles and alliances. The War of the 5 Kings raged on in new forms, with fresh secrets and shifting loyalties. Westeros lay like a great board, pieces scattered, each seeking advantage. Through it all, the memory of that fateful moment when Bronn turned against Tyrion for a higher price echoed on, reminding every soul in the 7 kingdoms that loyalty was as fleeting as the winter sun, and a single act could ripple across the land, twisting the fate of lords and small folk alike.